do you know why I'm excited for you being here today?
I have no idea.
Okay. And you would have no idea, right? Because it's more so a personal thing. Have you ever heard the phrase or the story or the idea, rather, that it takes 21 days or 21 days of consistent behavior to make a habit, right? 21's an odd number, which means that to get the halfway point to 21, you have to cross from 10 to 11, right? This is officially episode 11, which means I'm halfway there to making it to episode 21.
Congrats.
Yeah. So either we tilt in the right direction and continue, or we tilt in the wrong direction. So this is the make it or break it moment.
Oh boy, lots of pressure.
For you.
For me, yeah.
Not for me. No one cares.
I guess I'm used to pressure.
Okay. Well, I think, and I'll say this because this came up with Bindy's episode too. Is it CISO or is it CISO? I need you to draw the line in the sand today.
For me, it's CISO.
Okay.
What is it for you?
I don't know.
Okay.
I've
heard it both ways, to be honest with you.
And I think the reason for it is CSO, a chief security officer, is the letter C, so, right? Mm-hmm. If you're speaking Spanish and you say, I believe the word's piso, like a piece, right? P-I-S-O, piso. So now you put the C in there, CISO, right? I don't know. But when you say CISO without the I, or then you say CIS, I don't know. It's a question that'll never be answered. There's no professional.
Who's the authority on that?
I don't know. There's not a governing board. Is it ISSA or is it ISSA?
Don't know.
Exactly. That's my point. Is no one really knows. I say CISO, but I was having a conversation with a gentleman who works on the services side for a security company. He actually owns a company out here in Arizona, and we were talking and we were having coffee about working together on some stuff. And he said CISO, and this is the first time I've ever heard it.
Oh, really?
So I'm sitting across from him, and he says CISO. And before that, I said CISO, right? So I'm thinking, oh gosh, is he passive aggressive correcting me, or does he think I'm dumb now because I said CISO? I still talk to the guy, so obviously he doesn't think I'm dumb. But it was the first time I'd ever heard it, and I thought to myself, man, am I just walking around sounding dumb?
I don't think so. So the only time I've heard it is actually listening to another podcast.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's just one of those things that might just be the running joke for everyone that comes in here that's a CISO, or maybe they consider themselves a CISO. But that's why I'm excited to have you here, because it's a lot of work to reach out to people and get them to drive to, we'll say, the office, the studio. I don't know what my success rate is, because I don't want to, spiral into a depression in terms of the number of outreach versus the number of people that show up. But it's actually been really rewarding, because I've been able to talk to people that would otherwise never talk with me, right? And maybe not just me, just in general, make the time to talk. And I hope what a lot of people have seen in the past episodes is that it's more about the people, it's more about their stories, and it's more about, I would say, their struggles. And what you learn from that is something very important, or at least something that I find very important, is that there are, and I've said this before, there are two ways to learn. Okay? And I got this from a guy named Tom that he was an engineering director where I worked two roles before what I'm doing now, right? And he's a professional engineer, and he sat next to me for about 3 years. So probably the smartest mechanical engineer that I've ever met, if not probably one of the smartest in the world. And I always reference him because he's now a expert witness.
Oh, wow.
So he knows his stuff, because legally there are lawsuits with millions and hundreds of millions of dollars on the line where his opinion and his expert witness abilities from a mechanical engineering perspective either win or lose the money. And as far as I know, he's never lost.
Wow, that's
So
impressive.
that helps me know that he's probably one of the smartest. And so he looks over to me and he goes, hey, he's from Cicero, Chicago. He said, hey, Fernando, I've got something to tell you. Like, well, what is it, Tom? And we were in the middle of something, and he goes, there's only two ways to learn. You either learn by burning yourself, or you learn by watching your brother burn himself on the stove. And that stuck with me for almost, we'll say like 15 years.
Wow.
This was a while ago. And he's right, because you either learn from your own experience, which is a transaction of your time to do whatever you're trying to do, or you find someone that has the experience. Like, you don't build your own house.
Sure.
You find a home builder, right? You don't build your own microwave. You just buy a microwave, right? You could build your own if you wanted. You could get a box, aluminum foil, put a fan in there, put it outside in the sun, and hope for the best, right? Or you could just buy one for a few $100. And there is this trade-off, or the idea of a trade-off between time and money, right? And what I think a lot of professionals in the IT world have is those stories of struggle, whether it's professionally or personal, where they've learned a lot. And then over their career, they've moved up, right? And as they moved up, they've taken those lessons with them to where now they have the expertise to look at a situation and say, I know from my experience, right? Would I be wrong in saying you have a small circle of CISO friends that you regularly communicate with?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So I never knew this existed. I had an idea that it was
You
there.
didn't know of the CISO inner circle?
No. Are you guys on Signal, Telegram, or what are you guys on?
It depends. Usually it's just text or email.
Is it?
But I mean, some use Signal. I use Signal, but not. It's generally to talk to peers or colleagues.
Okay.
But yeah.
For sure, Slack, right? Slack, bing, all day. So I never really thought of it, but what I've noticed is that as I reach out to people to show up, they say, "Oh, I got a message yesterday from a gentleman. He said I checked with my inner circle, and they've had nothing but good things to say about you." Okay, right? Or with other past guests, they've kind of mentioned these circles, and it's less of a people working with the vendor community, right? From the OEM perspective, it's more so knocking on the door of someone in the same role, similar experience, to kind of just say, "Hey, cut through the slack, right? Or cut through the noise.
Sure.
Tell me how it is, right?"
Absolutely.
So you have that.
Yeah. That's one thing I love about being the CISO is there's so many peer communities, whether it's virtual and obviously local. Like I know you mentioned Bindi mentioning dinner next Thursday.
Yeah.
There's a few of us getting together. So it's been great. I think it's because we can empathize with one another. We understand the unique challenges of the role and can provide different perspectives or just have fun conversations over drinks. So
Yeah. Yeah, and what I found interesting was something that Mike said, not Manrod, but another Mike that was here from Vegas, was that everyone in IT in the community, and we'll just say broad strokes. I don't want to say in Vegas, right? But just say in general, people in IT, excluding security, view one another as competitors, right? Because the faster they can bring something to market, the more that they can sell of it, the better their internal structure is to get product out, turns into, can be monetized and becomes valuable, right? So they kind of look at one another as competition, because if I'm in the same industry as you and we're both working to get out to market, we run the risk of being friends but also being enemies, because technically the businesses that we work for. And what I found interesting in what he said was there is that world, and then there's a security world where everyone that's in security, they're all friends. They all talk to one another. So they're almost the exact opposite of everyone else in the IT community, because they, like you said, they empathize with one another. They learn from one another. And I think my favorite part is when you think about security, you think about how what I would call an existential risk to the business if security fails, right? And it is almost a bonding of people that understand the risk, where security controls processes are not in place, to where if something were to happen, it's bad news for everyone within the organization. And there is that, it's almost like a shared risk between the community of like, I don't want to fail. I don't want my friends to fail, my brothers, my sisters, my colleagues to fail. So, and I don't know if at any point this will get outside of security, but I do find it really, if I was a security expert, I would see it more like a family, right? Because you look out for the people that are your family, hopefully, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah, I'm sure there's an uncle somewhere where people want to forget about, you know, that
Sure.
uncle, right? But in most cases, you look out for your family, especially like your kids. And it seems like that exists, right? So being an outsider, I want to know, like, what was it like when you finally made it into the circle? We'll call it the circle of trust.
Yeah. To me, it was pretty paramount and pretty important because it's a very stressful job. You're under pressure a lot. Like I've always told my former boss, I feel like I'm in a pressure cooker. Like there's a lot of responsibility to get this right. I don't want our company to end up on the news or experience a significant breach. I don't want to be personally held liable. So just having a community where, again, like there's just a shared understanding of the risk that, yes, other outsiders can understand it, but not to the same extent that somebody who's like in the trenches has, you know, responding to security incidents all the time. It's somewhat of a unique perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely, we'll say, speaking for others, right? Because I've never been in the role, right? But what I imagine as an outsider looking in is that it's something that I told Mike is like a catch-22. You're either damned if you do or damned if you don't. And then kind of touch on it again in other episodes where we talked about when everything goes well, people wonder what you do, right?
Yeah.
And when everything goes sideways, people blame you for what happened.
Sure.
Right. And I even told Mike on the very first episode, I said, Mike, like, I don't know how you can do that because in either situation, you're losing, right? It's a constant game of, like you said, you're in the pressure cooker. You're always at risk of something happening. But if nothing happens, it's the other side of the fence looking at you and asking, well, what are you actually doing with your time? It kind of reminds me of parenting, right? If you have kids, right? Which I know you do because you've talked about that before. But I'll talk about my kids first, right? Is if my kids were to walk around with, as they would say, potty mouths, people would look at me and say, what kind of a father are you for allowing that, right? But then if they don't, and people hear other kids talking and they're in the mix and, you know, the kids are like, you know, maybe not participating, but they're there, and the kids don't speak up, right? We'll say they're around older kids and they don't speak up and say, hey, you shouldn't be saying those words. But my kids are, you know, smart enough to know that you shouldn't say it, but they don't participate. Then people might say, well, how come they didn't speak up? What kind of a father are you? Your kids should know that they shouldn't be saying those words, right? So I kind of look at it that through the lens of from parenting where you can't win in either case. You just have to hope for the best. Is that kind of similar to how you feel, not about parenting, but about work or like the pressure cooker scenario? Or I guess, what do you mean by pressure cooker?
Yeah. So prior to my current role, I was at Norton LifeLock right after they had the $100 million FTC settlement.
Okay.
And so I was responsible for ensuring that their vulnerabilities were remediated on a timely, within defined SLAs. And so I was always under pressure to ensure that other individuals were remediating the vulnerabilities. And when it didn't get done, my boss was asking me why, like even though I wasn't responsible for fixing it. Mm-hmm. And so I just always felt like I was under a microscope and I was the one feeling the accountability and the responsibility, even though I didn't necessarily own the risk. It was the asset owner. So that's what I mean by like feeling like I'm constantly in a pressure cooker. And in that particular environment, we were trying to strive for perfection,
Yeah.
right? Like fix everything within, 30, 60, 90 days, depending on the severity. And then I think, like, especially in light of like the Twitter whistleblower, Joe Sullivan, Tim Brown, I think for me, I just automatically just felt, well, that could be me one day. Like,
Yeah.
what am I going to do to mitigate that liability and the risk? And so that's what I mean by like feeling in a pressure cooker is there's like an expectation that you have 100% security, but that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Right. Especially in a context of the business, there's always some risks that we're willing to accept.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I think there is a little bit of a disconnect with some, expecting that we're never going to have an incident, we're never going to have a breach, but we're constantly under attack.
Yeah. It's I didn't realize that you were there at the time, right? When I was looking around, I kind of but I kind of read through the trajectory, right? So interesting thing, in 2005, I had graduated high school. Okay. In 2006, you were an audit intern, right?
Yes.
Fast forward to 2024.
Yeah.
You are now a CISO, right? CISO, not CISO. You are now a CISO. And it's been essentially 20 years, right? From the audit perspective, right? Through, managing vulnerabilities, right? Director, I think it was senior director is what I saw. And what I found interesting about that career path was it's one that not a lot of people talk about, or one that not a lot of people understand.
Sure.
Right? Because there, in some ways, it taps into GRC, right? And in a lot of cases, for me, we'll say being outsider looking in, right? Prior to starting the podcast, I had really little to no understanding of GRC. And I would say I don't know as much as an expert, obviously, but I know a lot more than I did a year ago. And through those optics, it was hard for me to understand a career path outside of an engineering role, outside of a pen testing role. But what I was happily, we'll say, surprised with was there was this whole part of security that a lot of people don't understand, they don't know exists, because it's not the typical what you read about or hear about. It just kind of exists in the background. And I like to think of it as the glue for the business.
Yeah, the foundation.
Yeah, right. And one of the things that Rich said when he was here was that, compliance isn't a checkbox. It's the result of good practices and processes put in place. It is the output, is the result of a strong foundation, right? And it really clicked with me because it's like, yeah, you're right. You're not healthy because you eat well, right? It could happen, but you're healthy because you exercise. You go to the gym, you get enough sleep, right? You play, you have fun, you laugh, you do all these things that contribute to your overall, and maybe not fitness, but maybe happiness. We'll say happiness, right? People aren't happy because they eat well. They're happy because of a number of different things that they do. And that's how I think of compliance, is where now it's like, there's all these facets to security that people may or may not be aware of, because especially if you're trying to get into security, you only have what is available, easy to find, right? And I wouldn't say it's a disservice to the community, but I think more people need to understand, the route that you took, because the route that you took from the auditing perspective is one that how do I say this? It's not that it doesn't get the MVP award, but it's one that doesn't get talked about enough.
Yeah, because it's unconventional, right? To your point, I think a lot of cybersecurity professionals start their career because of their technical experience, or they study, something technical, whether it's engineering or getting a CIS degree. I honestly didn't expect to ever be a cybersecurity professional. Like, that wasn't my goal. So like my goal growing up was I wanted to be a CPA. I wanted to be a partner at a Big Four accounting firm. Okay. So that's kind of how I started my career. And then my mentor, I got laid off unexpectedly. And my mentor's like, you should check out this cybersecurity role at American Express. And
Which
I read
was
the job description and I'm like, are you sure? Like, I have no idea what a vulnerability is. I don't know what a bug, a patch, or anything is. I don't meet any of these qualifications. Are you sure I should apply? And she's like, yeah, go for it. And I was super intimidated and I applied and met with the team. And when they were talking, to your point about the different facets of cybersecurity, whether it was application security, pen testing, the security operations center, vulnerability management, they got to GRC, and I'm like, that sounds like the role that, I could fit into, but that wasn't the role I was applying for.
Yeah.
And so, like, I had a little bit of insecurities, but yeah, I started my career like doing vulnerability management, but I tried to figure out how I can contribute. And they would do like self-assessments based on the control frameworks. And so I used my experience at KPMG to kind of build out their controls and their test of design, test of operational effectiveness, and then kind of became the person to go solve problems that were discovered through internal audit. So that's kind of how I got started.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like a deliberate, intentional.
Yeah. You'll find that there's a lot of people that don't have, we'll say, the intentional role or idea of getting into security. I think there's a lot of demand for it, or there's a lot of, we'll say, people interested in it.
Sure.
But as some of the past guests have pointed out, it's because of the money, right? People look at it as a way to earn and may not necessarily be as passionate about security, right? But when you told that story, I was thinking in my head about one specific thing, and I think it's the part that I like the most. And I don't know if you've ever thought of it this way, but when you described that situation, what I heard was you came into security not necessarily feeling adequate with what the job description read in the very beginning. So we'll say 21 years ago. And now, or I guess it'd technically be 19, but when you look back at it now, right, and you think to yourself, like, how far you've come, right, how successful you've become, the amount of things that you've done in your entire career, it all started with like this little seed of doubt, right?
Absolutely.
I don't want to say low self-worth because I don't think that was the case, but I think there's a part of us that always doubts our capabilities.
Absolutely.
Right? And they always say if you stick to something long enough, you will be successful. Right? So I think what I like the most about that whole story of, where you started to where you are now is like when you look back at the journey, it wouldn't have been what it is without the mentor
Absolutely.
believing in you. Because there was like you said, there was a part of you that didn't feel that you believed enough in yourself. And having a mentor there to say, look, Dina, I understand it may not seem right, but I think you should try, right? They almost like push you off the ledge.
Absolutely.
Right. And it's an interesting thing because everyone that's been in here has had a mentor. And what I've seen is that a lot of people that have had mentors have been able to do a lot more than they realized. Right.
Yeah, because the mentor's your accountability partner. They push you out of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's paramount. Yeah, if it wasn't for my mentor, I never would have explored cybersecurity role.
Yeah.
I probably would have found another audit position at a smaller accounting firm and been somewhere else.
Yeah, and it's weird to think that how, one person changed the trajectory.
Absolutely.
Right? And I don't think enough mentors get enough credit for what they do for the people that they speak with. But what I've also noticed with a lot of guests is they've all been in a similar situation where they felt maybe not adequate to do the job, or that they just didn't feel 100% confident. We'll just say that because I don't like how not feeling adequate sounds. I think the confidence level,
the self-confidence.
Yeah, the self-confidence isn't there. So we'll just go with that. But there's always been someone pushing them. Someone that says, I believe in you, right? Someone that says, I think you can do more than you realize. And the outcome of that is people go with it, they try it, and then they actually do it. And then that, in the grand scheme of things, changes the world. It changes the role that we have, from what we originally started with to what we become. And usually what we become is something far greater than what we had ever imagined. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you too was, as a kid, like my daughter wants to be a veterinarian. Come on, really? Like why? She loves cats. She loves kids, right? We now have 3 cats. She doesn't ever take care of them like she said she would. When we got the 3rd one, we said, hey, we'll get a 3rd one. And your job is to do this, and this. And just this morning, my wife was telling me, like, look, you haven't done any of this stuff that you agreed to, right? Like, why do we have so many pets that you wanted, right? And it's really interesting to think that, right now, at 11 years old, she wants to be a veterinarian, right? She wants to do a lot of things,
Sure.
but that's the main one. And I don't know if she's going to end up doing that, right? So I'm kind of curious as a kid, 11 years old, or let's just say 10, right? As far back as you can think, like because I'm sure when you were 10, you didn't want to be a CPA.
Well, no, I don't honestly remember what I wanted to be at 10, but in high school, I definitely wanted to be an accountant. Like I remember taking my first personal finance course and understanding and like asking our teacher, like, can we get an accounting course? And
Really?
I took a college level course that just myself and one of my friends was interested in taking that they just customized just for us.
Oh.
There was only 2 students in the class. So,
Really?
yeah, like I always wanted to be, like I loved math, I guess, growing up. So I think I kind of gravitated towards that.
Okay.
Yeah.
If there's one language that I speak very well, it is math.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was doing differential equations in high school.
Oh, okay.
So when it comes to math, I'm probably not as good as I'm definitely not as good as I used to be. But if you think of that one person, when you think of Excel,
Yeah.
like there's someone you think about when you think of Excel wizard. I am that wizard for a lot of other people.
Nice.
Right. So I was doing a lot of VBA coding.
Okay.
Right. I did a lot of other coding in my life. Right. And it's just something that I understand because it's never wrong. Right. The output is always what it should be or what you expect.
Sure.
There's no emotion tied to it.
Yeah.
Right. It is what it is. Right. But I would have never guessed it. I don't know. I guess maybe this is just me not having an understanding of like the CPA side. I never really imagined a career, like even though it uses numbers, right? And that's why I went the other route that I went, which was engineering. But I'm curious, like when you look back now and you think of like as a high school, we'll say high school student because that's what you were, and you wanted to get into the finance, like is there like any sense of like regret that you didn't go that route? Because that's you told yourself that's what you wanted, but yet you find yourself in a different role, right? Like, do you ever think like, man, like when you think of the pressure cooker,
Yeah.
do you think to yourself like, man, I really should have just went this other route?
I don't think I have any regrets. I mean, at the time that I got laid off at the Big Four firm, like I was really resentful, because they sent me to Stockton, California, which it was at the time the second most miserable city in the U.S.
What's the first one?
Detroit.
That's where I was born.
Oh my gosh! What?
Yes.
Oh wow. Okay, sorry, I've never been there.
I was curious of the answer because I didn't know that it was the most miserable one, but I was born there.
Oh wow.
And I've talked about this before in with some of the guests is like, so Mike,
Yeah.
we'll call him Vegas Mike.
Okay.
Because we don't know if his episode is going to be approved to release yet.
Okay.
But Vegas Mike, he was, he has a history with Detroit. He has a history in Germany, a history everywhere. So we kind of talked about Detroit a lot in our recording, in our 5-hour session. But it's interesting. When you said that, I was like, I wonder if Detroit's one. I was thinking it was somewhere in California, but
Like what?
maybe, I don't know. It could be LA. I mean, or Oakland? Have you seen Oakland recently?
I don't get out much, right? I'm a mom of 2 toddlers and I have a stressful job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it is definitely it's the number 2 most miserable place, right? So they did that to you.
Yes.
They
and
sent
it
you
was
out there.
So they sent me to Washington Mutual, which obviously does not exist any longer.
I remember when they went out. It was like 2008 or 9.
Correct. Yes. So it was about then. We were doing like anti-money laundering compliance, which actually was fun for me because you would look at transactions that could be indicative of money laundering, and then we would file suspicious activity reports through the government. And so that was actually fun, but I was there for a year and a half. But on the weekends, I got to go to San Francisco. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a family. So it was fun, but I was always traveling. I was almost never home. And so when I got laid off, I had the highest utilization out of like all the associates. And so I kind of thought, they're never going to get rid of me. Like I'm a workhorse for them. I have like such great work ethic. And I remember receiving the email, like partner confidential meeting. And I just, like a colleague and I got the same email, and we just went down to Mill, grabbed a drink because we're like, we're going to get laid off. But honestly, like in the moment, I had a lot of resentment. But looking back, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I never would have been where I am today had that not happened, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I think so. So that's another thing. It wasn't on our list of ideas, right? But that's why I like just kind of just flowing with it, right? Is it reminds me of a story for me personally. So I was in college and I got dumped, right? It was like a 3.5, 4 year relationship, but it was from high school, right?
Okay.
So that was kind of defeating.
Sure.
And one thing that I've, kind of felt at the time was it was because of my weight, right? I kind of got out of hand. And I think at the highest point, I was at 240, which is interesting to say because right now I'm roughly between 230 and 240. So I'm about the same size, but I have much different composition. I'm still fluffy, but I was really fluffy then, right? And what I told myself was that it was because of my weight, right? And what ended up happening was I went to the gym. I started going all the time. And then I met friends, right? I ended up competing a few times. And, I won at least one trophy. I think I placed sixth on one of them. I for sure placed sixth on one, so I just missed it by one placing.
Impressive.
But I've done bodybuilding, right? But I wasn't like professional bodybuilding. I was amateur level, but it's just a lot of work. But the one good thing that came out of that is I met a really good friend of mine. And I still talk to him to this day. We were talking last night, like 10 or 11, about, work stuff. Because he's in tech sales too, right? And at the time, he was working at CDW. And we were working out together. And he was just like, hey, man, like, you should come do this work. You make way more money than you would as an engineer, right? And I was like, oh, okay. And then eventually I got laid off. So I got laid off the day after we put down, I think, $10,000 for surgery for my wife. So I put down this deposit for her to have a medical surgery done. And then the next day I got laid off.
Sorry.
And then,
that's rough.
Oh no, it was pretty stressful because we just had our first daughter.
Oh, wow.
Right, and she had to have some medical work done that insurance doesn't necessarily cover to the extent that we needed it to cover. So here I am, laid off, no job. I think I got an $8,600 check, something like that. It was under 10 grand for sure because I remember thinking like this doesn't even cover. I can't even wash this other bill that we're going to get from the surgery center. Just had our first daughter, and I had just competed recently. 2-3 months before, right? And man, like this is terrible. But my buddy was like, hey man, like now is the time. Now is the time. And I said, okay. So I did it. Best decision I ever made.
Absolutely.
Right? Because when you're in tech sales, it's way different than anything else, right? As far as the potential goes, right? And
plus you have a personality for it.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that and show
you
people. You
should. Absolutely.
So I did really well in sales, right? And there's a funny story I'll tell you there later about sales. And it all started with being dumped. But at the time, I couldn't tell you how sad I was. I probably couldn't express to you the amount of pain or guilt that I felt about, how I looked personally, right? Physically, right? Or maybe just in general, just when you get dumped, there's this sense of low confidence, low self-worth, right? And I kind of spiraled into a quasi-depression. And the only way that I kind of fought through that was with going to the gym. So I went from about 240 at my peak to just under 150 in a couple of years. And then I built up to about 220, more lean.
Sure.
Right? And then I cut back down to about 175. And then I, went on stage in the middleweight class, and that's how I ended up getting that trophy that I had from the last episode. But when I look back, I think to myself, like, man, at the time, that was probably the worst day of my life. Much like yourself. On Mill Avenue with your friend. You're not laid off yet. But
or
you're
anticipation.
Yeah, you're expecting the guillotine to drop, right? Mm-hmm. So you're just having as much fun as you can until the blade,
the meeting happens,
goes through, right?
Yeah.
But now when you look back at it, there's a sense of I am so happy that had happened to me because of where I exist today as a result. And if there's anything that's useful in that whole story, is that I think there's a lot of people, specifically in tech, that are going through tough times today. I couldn't tell you how many people are being laid off, right? Where companies are losing 10, 15, 20%. And they're losing them because of this transition towards not automation, but more so AI, right? Trying to find how you can cut people here, like Dell has done. Dell is kind of focusing on cutting a certain number of people so they can focus on their AI business, right? And they're going to be at the Tech Summit next week talking about Dell and AI, right? Okay. One of my buddies is presenting there. It's really interesting to see that there's so many people in tech that are either struggling to find work, that have been in tech for a while, people trying to find their way into tech. So it's almost even worse for people trying to get in because there are a lot of highly seasoned professionals that are looking for their next role. And to me, I think a lot of them would see it as probably one of the worst days in their life, much like you, right? Much like me, for different reasons. For them, it's because they were laid off. But what I hope that they find, right, and I'm sure they will, is that in a few years from now, they're going to be somewhere else. They're going to be better. They're going to be happier. They're going to be more successful. But they just have to
weather the storm.
They have to weather it. They have to go on Mill Avenue.
Absolutely.
They have to find a friend. And they just have to hang out, Because eventually it'll pass.
Absolutely.
But it only passes if you go through it.
What was interesting in your story that was similar to mine is both of us ended up where we were because of a mentor or a friend. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of, I don't know, comes full circle about the importance of building the relationships. Every single career opportunity I have is a direct result of a relationship that I built.
Yeah. And so I might just become the bad guy for this.
Oh, gosh. What?
I'm just going to say, I might just become the bad guy. But I've had this idea, and I'll tell you, I haven't really posted on LinkedIn anything personal in a while. I was doing other videos, and then now I've kind of shifted to more so podcast specific and guests and highlighting guests. But this idea that I had is that when you see the green banner, right, someone's obviously looking for work. And usually it's like the blanket statement, hey, everyone, I'd love to chat, connect, talk about things, right? I see that a lot. And my first thought is, you didn't even write that, right? You're looking for work, and you didn't even take the time to write that, you're looking and make it more personalized, right? That's my first thought, right? But usually what comes from that is this other idea that I had is that, but you also haven't built relationships outside of the people that you know, to now you have to go to the LinkedIn community, right? So I've only gone to a handful of the local events. And usually I might be busy, but I went to the last one, right? That you were a panelist on for the, I know it was
Security Alliance.
Yeah, it was the CSA event, but I was thinking the companies that presented.
Sure.
I can't think of the names right now. Prancer, yes. They guide you through. Do you know how he got the name for that, by the way?
No, I assume it was like Christmas or reindeer. I don't know.
So apparently Prancer was the reindeer that guided them through the clouds. Okay. And that's what they do. They guide customers through their cloud journey, right? So Prancer actually came from Santa and the reindeer.
That resonates with me. My daughter was born on Christmas.
Oh, was she?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where the name came from. Is more so we're helping guide our customers through the clouds, or through the cloud, I think is the phrase. But I heard that was actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's the other companies that did the fencing of their assets and a few other things. I had to walk out for one of them. But at these events, I used to go and I didn't talk to anyone. The very first one I went to was when I met Joe, and he was the only person that I talked to.
Okay.
Right. I walked in, it was a Christmas one from last year. And I walked in with a bunch of toys for kids because it was a toy drive. And I had a Play-Doh set. And I said, where does this go? And he goes, hey, my name is Joe. I go, oh, hey, Joe, who are you? Oh, I'm the president of it. Oh, hang on.
Yeah.
Who are you? So I'm the president of the local chapter. Oh, okay. Well, what do you do? Oh, I'm the CRO over here at Lightstream. Oh, okay. Right. And then I knew Tyler from his Palo days. We had always worked together. I said, oh, okay. So I met Joe, and then we started talking, and then I started going to more events. And that's actually how I first met Mike. Was he walked into an event, didn't know who he was. And I feel like I told the story so many times. So
Yes, I did. I think I remember hearing it on his episode.
yeah. Right.
He was late and Deb roasted him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you did. So
I listened.
You officially listened to the
told you,
episode.
yeah.
And I didn't. So here's the thing. Is I didn't know Mike. I didn't know anyone. I didn't even know Joe. I just randomly showed up with a bunch of toys that my wife had bought that morning because I told her, hey, there's an event. It's a toy drive. Give me stuff for kids, please. Right?
Everyone needs a wife. Yes.
Everyone does, right? Or at least a spouse that can go out while you're busy doing other stuff. So I walk in there with these things. And the point of the story is I didn't know anyone, but I showed up, right? And I showed up and I kept showing up. And as I kept showing up,
You met more people.
I met more people, right? And then I find out about another event. I found out about Cactus Con. I couldn't tell you what Cactus Con was before. I would have guessed it's something to do with maybe some cactus in the desert. It's something local,
Sure.
named after, I don't know, maybe it's like a botany type thing, right? It's just all cactus, all plants, right? Maybe they have it at like the place in Phoenix.
Oh, like the botanical garden?
Yeah, maybe it's there. I don't know.
Sure.
And I went to that because I was in the course with Mike, and he had talked about, hey, if anyone wants to go, we'll be there, right? And then we're going to present, and I'm doing this thing. Okay, so I'll go, and then I go, and then there's the panel on the Saturday, right? And
that's for the CISOs, yeah.
Yeah, Lester was there.
Nice.
Kim was there, right? Andy was the guy. So from episode 2, Andy was the person running,
Facilitating.
Yeah, the
He
whole.
made it happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He's the man. He's the legend
brains,
of
yeah,
the whole
behind it.
CISO track,
Yeah.
right? It was his baby,
Absolutely.
and I think to myself like, yeah, I went to this event, and I could have just gone and left, right? But the minute you talk to one person, you get introduced to the next, and then you find the next, and then it just kind of snowballs.
It's definitely a domino effect for sure.
And then eventually, what do? Well, you could start a podcast.
Yeah.
And then it's just really easy to talk to people now because you've seen them so many times and they recognize you. But to take it back to the open to work, what hurts the most, or what I see the most pain in, is that there is a tendency for people, right? And I don't want to say everyone, there's a tendency for people to not make the effort when they don't need to, right? You think about when someone is vulnerable, or they're in a situation where they need help, if they don't have people to rely on, it's very likely that they weren't making the effort to help others in their time of need, right? And there was a time where it was someone's birthday. I'm like, whatever. I don't care, right? Who cares?
Sure.
But now if I know it's someone's birthday, I'll shoot them a text, say, hey, happy birthday. I haven't talked to you in like 5 years, which has happened recently.
Yeah.
Hey, happy birthday, right? I saw on LinkedIn it was your birthday. I just want to say happy birthday. Sometimes you get the who's this and you say, oh, it's me. And like, oh, how have you been, right? But people remember that sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
But when it comes to like professional development and finding your next move, like you said, you wouldn't have been where you're at without these people. But had you not taken the time to build a relationship with these people, no wonder why it's so hard for people to get in tech, because they're not meeting the people that are in there. And that's something that Joe and I talked about, is that he has these CSA events where anyone can show up. and he had a really good story that you might hear if I release it today or on Monday. Was there was someone that wasn't in tech at all, didn't have a background, came to the events, met some people, took a couple certifications, and now she's working in tech.
That's awesome. That's how it should work. But the difference that you're pointing out is the initiative to actually build the relationship.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing to put a generic post on LinkedIn. It's another to like do some outreach.
Or show up.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Or drive 30 minutes.
Sure.
Right? So whenever I see someone that now, there have been people that at the time when I was working at a different company in sales, right? I would reach out. Hey, like,
want to chat?
You want to chat?
Yeah.
You want to work? You want to send me some POs?
Sure.
Crickets. The minute I see open to work, I'm like, man. There's two routes I could take. It could be one like, you know what?
I'm going to ignore you.
Yeah.
Or I'll help you.
Exactly. So now I've started taking the other one where it's like, man, like I remember 4 years ago, you wouldn't pick up a phone call. You wouldn't respond. I could offer you anything. You just wouldn't pick up. I don't know the reason, right? It doesn't matter the reason. But now people are in a place where they're looking for work. And I say, you know what? Like, I'm just going to be a good person and I'm going to try and help them. And I couldn't tell you how many people have had green banners where I'm like, you know what? I probably should just ignore this, but then I just kind of perpetuate the problem, right? So I've personally tried to be more, we'll say like responsive for people in need. But my first thought is like, hey, like when you're in these positions, especially like in a role like where you're at, where you're just inundated with salespeople all day long, like you could just choose to be the bad guy, or you can be the good guy and say, hey, fortunately it's not the right time. Get back with us later.
Sure.
Not that you have time to do that, but I think for me, some of the people that I was working with probably weren't getting as much spam as I'm sure you get, right? And especially, so here's the thing: is someone that they have a partnership with, someone that they have they have a business relationship with the brand, with the company, and maybe we were working with a networking team, but we weren't working with the storage team. Storage guys are just ignoring us. Networking guys love us, right? And it's like, hey, I understand that you do well for the networking team. Maybe it's just because I'm in sales, and I feel like there's a level of courtesy.
The courtesy though needs to be reciprocated, right? Especially with some of the more recent like adjustments in sales tactics around just scheduling meetings. Oh my gosh, that is such a pet peeve.
You don't like that?
Oh my gosh, I feel like calendars like sacred. Don't send unsolicited calendar invites.
So, okay. So I always try and talk about sales stuff and with everyone that comes in.
Okay.
Because I have my perspective and you have yours, right? I can confidently say that I have never sent an unsolicited email invite.
Okay.
Okay. But that's just my style. I know someone's going to get them, they're just going to hit delete. I get them and I hit delete because I don't know who you are, right?
Sure.
Right. So tell me, what are the top 3 things? Right. So we're doing this for all the salespeople out there. And I'm looking at the camera right now. We're doing this for the salespeople out there. The people that say maybe they want to speak with you, the people that want to get in front of you, and have productive conversation about what they can offer you or the business or wherever you're working. Right. What are the top 3 things that people do that you wish that they wouldn't do from a sales tactic perspective?
Okay. Yeah.
Right? And so, and I'll preface it with this is like, if you see something that you say, hey, you want to delete that later, let me know. Right. But I do want to get like an honest opinion on kind of like, what are people doing well?
Sure.
From a sales perspective, and what are people doing that they could do better in your opinion? Because I think getting your feedback is going to help the overall sales community to understand how does someone in this sort of position don't.
Sure. Yeah, I think to your point, we get inundated with emails and phone calls. So I don't pick up my phone if I don't have the number saved. So for me, that's not an effective route to try to reach me.
Okay.
And so for emails, I think what I have been responsive for is obviously if there's a business need and I'm familiar with the brand and I don't know who you are, like I might respond back and say, let's have a conversation. I'd love to get a demo of your product. What has also worked is sometimes like when people do a little bit of research. And so when that's in the subject line, I'm like, somebody did their homework, shows some initiative that, okay, you don't have a relationship, but you're doing some homework.
Or like the fact that your team is 30% women.
Absolutely. I'm very proud of that. See? Yeah. See?
Who researched? Me.
You did. Absolutely. So I think that is helpful. And obviously, if you have a network or, again, the inner circle of the CISOs, oftentimes you might not even talk to vendors. You might just tap your friend on the shoulder and say, who are you using for this specific product or this, I have a business need. And so, I don't know. I think it's, if you have a relationship or somebody in the valley is using your product, I think it's easier if Mike said, hey, I use product X, I'm more likely to talk to that vendor than just, unsolicited.
So basically, you kind of have to leverage existing customers and say, hey, like...
I think, like a customer referral has worked. Like I've offered vendors before, like I'm a satisfied customer. I'm happy to talk to any prospects you have.
Just make sure you give me 25% off on the renewal.
No.
Right? There's people that do that. I mean, there's a lot of people where, hey, I will happily do some sort of marketing, right? I'll let you put the company logo, my name, on marketing or on testimonial type stuff for discounts. It's something that Mike actually mentioned that he's done in the past, where it's kind of like you scratch my back, I scratch yours.
Sure.
So doing research, having a good recommendation or referral base from someone else that, you have to do well with. Someone else has to be the guinea pig, essentially. Like someone has to be the person that becomes the first, say, buyer of a product or service. And then
I think it helps.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then just not calling your cell phone.
Or random text. Like I got one today and I'm like, I'm going to block you. Like, that's crazy.
So here's I got your text today.
And you're like, who is this?
And it was right when you were supposed to be here or close to it. And I thought, because I saw the car parked out front.
Yeah.
And so I pulled up 20 minutes before, you were going to be here. And I saw your car pull up and I saw someone get out and go to the trunk and then get back in. Oh, okay. I was like, that's probably not her. And then I just came in, I brought I started setting it up.
Yeah.
And then I get this text that says, I don't know if I'm in the right place. Sounds like a scam.
because you didn't know it was me.
Yeah, because I don't have your number saved.
I have the worst navigation skills, so I'm just like, am I here?
Well, you made it to the right spot. You were at the wrong door, right? Because there's like that door over there is like blocked out, and it's just you can get to there through the warehouse, right? So that's
they all judged me.
Oh, okay.
Peeked my head in there.
Oh, did you look in?
I did.
Oh, you might have been at the cabinet place next door.
I have no idea.
Okay. Well, there's a place next door that does cabinets and stuff.
Okay.
So maybe it was them.
I don't know. I saw boxes.
It was probably the warehouse then. So one of the doors is down the aisle or down one of the aisles for like storage and stuff. But yeah, I saw this text and I thought, oh man, like if I respond to this, am I going to get phished, right? Or am I going to get hacked? And then I look at the time. I know. So I took a risk on responding.
Yeah, you did.
And then I walked outside, and then you were there, right? So I'm happy, but now I have to save you because if I get another text from that number,
that's
I'm
right.
like,
You're not going to respond.
Who is this, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to take your approach of not responding. So those are the things that they do well, right? Do you feel comfortable talking about the things that they could improve on, or the things that are like just kind of like press buttons for you?
Yeah. So one is just like the frequency of outreach. Like I get a lot of emails, but there are some sales personnel, and I can appreciate the persistence, but when you're sending like 3 emails on the same day, it's pretty unlikely that I'm going to respond. And then recently it kind of pressed my buttons where the salesperson like reached out to some of my team members as well.
And they said they spoke with you?
Well, I was on the email, but to get me to respond, which I did respond, but probably not in the way that they wanted me to.
So it worked, but not in their favor.
No, because I'm like, this is very unprofessional.
Oh, well, would it have been bad if they just removed you and just went after like Dana, for example?
I don't know. I think the fact that they use that as a tactic to get me to respond just kind of rubbed me the wrong
So you're not working with them? Oh. Okay. So what if they reached out to your team first and said, "Hey,"
way. Yeah, that's totally fine.
right?
Yeah.
And
And my team comes to me too to say, hey, I got an email from this vendor. Their product looks cool. Like, can we have a conversation? I'm all about that. Yeah, that's totally fine.
okay, okay.
It was just like 20 minutes after sending me an individual email, like adding some of my team. And it was like, you could tell they just found emails through LinkedIn because people weren't even employed with the company anymore, the wrong emails, people that are not even associated with my team being
Okay.
copied.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes like a time waster because now it's like, hey, do you know? No, who do you know? What?
Yeah, then
And
you're getting Slack messages. Who's this person? Why'd I get this email? I'm like, don't respond.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Was there a third? Well, the calendar invites was one.
Yes.
The overuse or
The frequency.
the frequency, just kind of looping in other people that aren't even the right people, could be the
Correct.
wrong people, right? Presumably wrong people, or people that don't even exist anymore in the company.
Yes.
So that's
Those
the,
are my top three. And then once you have a relationship with, like like a existing relationship with a customer, I was just talking at lunch to a vendor and said, man, what is wrong with some of these salespeople? I am asking you about a specific use case, and you're telling me about how your product's different, which is great. But I only want to focus on what I actually need. And so sometimes I get lost where it's like it kind of feels a little transactional. Like, are you actually listening to what, like, yeah, you have all these bells and whistles, but can we just focus the conversation on this specific module that I'm looking for instead of, I mean, it's good to know about the whole portfolio, but then you kind of lose your customer, I think.
yeah, and I'll tell you why that happens because I
Why is
understand.
it?
I understand why.
Oh, I have no
right?
idea why.
You have to think of it as, and I've never been on the vendor side. So when you're at lunch with the OEMs, I've worked with them enough to understand how they work, right? So there's this idea of multi-threading. Have you heard of that? No? Okay. So interestingly enough, there is a whole practice, there is a whole framework. There, a lot of the stuff that you've mentioned are things that people preach about on LinkedIn, but you have to know who they are to follow to kind of get this information. And there is this idea in part of sales and sales enablement that I've learned is through OEMs as a result of working with them, what they call multi-threading, right? And it's this idea that you have multiple people within an organization that are your champion, they're the executive signer, they are the purchasing team. Essentially, you kind of think of it like a shark in the water
Okay.
and fresh meat. Okay.
Yeah.
You have to circle the fresh meat, right? And it sounds terrible to say that, but that's the first thing that comes to my mind is where you have to understand that if there is an opportunity on the table for a purchase order of some sort, you can't rely on one person, right? Because that one person may not be the right person. And if they're not the final decision maker, like they're the engineer, but they're not the architect, and you don't speak with the architect to understand how the product fits within the environment, there's an issue there, right? Because your champion could go and get shot down by the architect that doesn't understand it well enough to sign off on it, right? So you only talk with one person, you're at risk of losing to someone that you don't even know exists, right? And then when it comes to the executive team, like whose budget does this go against? Do they even have the money, right? How do I understand the purchasing cycle? Well, now I have to talk to purchasing. So especially in the enterprise space, it's not you talk to one person, you get the PO. Small business happens all day long. You have one person that manages a lot of different things. They know what they want. They know how to use it. They have a plan to use it. Sign off and go, right? Mid-market, a little bit more complex. But once you get to the enterprise space, where it's like 10,000 or more, or even like 2,500, you find that there are a lot of people that are part of the decision process. So what you have to do is you have to understand who plays what role within the environment, right? Within the decision. And that's what multi-threading is. So when you think about multi-threading, right, you think of all these different people. So what you have to end up doing eventually is figure out where are additional use cases that I can hook into other departments, right? So it's like the person that you're speaking with may not necessarily care, not that they didn't, not they may not have realized that you don't care about these other features, right? But by simply mentioning these features to you, now you know
Yeah, they plant the seed.
what's possible, right? And what you'll probably find happen, right? And I might just be, crystal balling it, right? Is that in a few weeks, you might hear from a peer within the organization that says, hey, do you know this person? They mentioned that they're talking to you about this use case, but that we could potentially use it here, right? So when you think of multi-threading, you think of these different people that are involved with something that may or may not know about one another working on something. And usually the really good reps are the ones that understand this because they can understand, who are the different people that I can speak with that I can bring together for a common goal, which is obviously the purchase of the product. So this maybe seed was planted for you, right? And we'll say it was product X or manufacturer X with these subset of features. You only care about one, but you're aware of the others. So now if someone else on the team that maybe specifically focus on another thing says, hey, I was contacted by this person or this team. Do you know them? Well, yeah, I just went to lunch with them. Oh, okay. What did they tell you? They offer this. Oh, but we use this instead. And then the gears start turning, and then it turns into, well, could this replace that? I don't know. And then, purchasing might reach out and say, hey, we have a renewal coming up for this product. What do you guys want to do? Now it's top of mind, right? And now that's top of mind, you think, well, how much is that versus how much is theirs, right? So you kind of just go through this journey where, depending on the product, it could be 6 months, it could be a year and a half. Some sales cycles are 2 years plus, right? But it's like there's these different parts, and I think the problem is that, not necessarily a problem, but the situation is that everyone in a professional role has their problems to worry about. They don't necessarily worry about other people's problems. But as a salesperson, in a professional setting, you have to understand 10 different people and why they care. And if you understand why they care, then you understand where you can speak to them. You can kind of meet them where they are and their pain points. And if you do that,
That's an interesting perspective. I appreciate you sharing that because for me, it
feels like you're just getting oversold.
Yeah, and actually then I don't wind up doing an evaluation generally of the vendor because I'm like, you're not listening to what I need.
Yeah. So it
kind of backfires, at least it has.
It backfires a lot.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there was a level of people that have been in sales long enough to understand a good time and a bad time to bring things up. Early on, I think depending on the tenure of the person, you might find yourself just getting, inundated with just everything that it can do, because the idea is like, I need to just throw anything at the wall to figure out what'll work. And that usually kind of comes with a certain level of experience. And then as you've been doing it long enough or longer, you kind of understand like, that's just not the way. And then eventually you realize that you don't even mention it, or you might mention, hey, I'm going to send you some stuff. Look at it if it seems important, but I want you to be aware because most people don't know that we offer this. There's plenty of companies, like if you say Palo Alto, for example, everyone knows their firewalls, right? You buy a 5K series, 8K series, whatever they have now, Prisma Access. A lot less people know about that, right? There's a lot less people that are aware of, Palo Alto, I think, that was IBM buying QRadar, but Palo Alto's bought plenty of companies,
Alan.
Yeah, right? And not too many people are aware of how that integrates with the platform. Right. And now Palo Alto is specifically selling a platform versus a point product solution. Yeah. Right. But the problem with Palo is, much like most of these vendors, is they're known for a certain task, certain product, or a certain outcome. And the problem for them becomes the education of the client on what else they can do.
Yeah.
Because if you can have a platform versus 50 different tools, you're more inclined to buy it. Right. And I think all that just goes to say is that over time, you'll probably see it in your role, if you haven't already, is that there are different levels of approaches that people have. So not that they were doing it wrong, but maybe there's a better time to talk about like ancillary products and services.
Yeah, or make me an advocate. If you can solve my problem, I'm going to advocate for you and go tell the different departments. Like, I know who to talk to.
Yeah.
And so maybe spend time first on the relationship and solving that one problem, and then you're like, wait, I have this and that. I like that. I actually have vendors that do that all the time. It's like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. Let's have a conversation. I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah, that has a name too. You want
What's that?
to guess what that's called?
Oh boy.
I'll let you-
Upselling? I don't know.
Oh, that's upsell, cross sell, but
Okay.
most people call it land and expand.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of times on the manufacturer level, right, the OEM level,
Yeah.
give it away. Just get in the door, right? Once you have your foot in the door, you pivot to another conversation.
That makes
So you'll usually find like a really good discount on the very first purchase of like a new platform, a new product, new service.
Yeah.
And it's like dirt cheap. And you're thinking my negotiation skills are
Phenomenal.
phenomenal,
Yeah.
right? I'm not going to name any names.
Sure.
But we'll just say that it happens. And it happens for a very good reason because they understand the opportunity with a 15,000 seat client,
Absolutely.
what it could mean for them for another product versus what they're currently talking about. So it's just give it away, 80% off. And it doesn't matter. Can they accept free stuff, right? Just get in the door, implement it, give services away for free, right? Make sure it goes well. Once you're in, then, you've kind of breached the gate. And now you can pivot into other areas. And then now there's ideally some sort of relationship. Yeah, the sales one's a little weird. And I don't know how I feel about it. I just kind of feel like I have my own way of doing things and I'm different, right? Because
it seems to me like you're great at building relationships and getting to know people, and you feel genuine and authentic. So
yeah, because I like to say I don't have any sort of like ulterior motive.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times you expect certain things. And my main thing is like, I hope that when you leave, like I told you earlier, that you had so much fun that you want to have some of your friends come in, right? And they can talk about their stories. But you don't necessarily get that because in a world driven by quotas, in a world driven by upper management looking for certain things to get done by certain timelines, deadlines to me, we have our quarterly,
yeah.
you don't understand what it's like. There's
Pressure.
yeah, there's pressure. You're in the pressure cooker. We have to do certain things. And then the result is that the action that you receive is a result of the incentive, right? And I've said that before. So with this, there's really no incentive, right, for me to have a particular action other than making sure you have fun,
Yeah.
right, and making sure you enjoy it. So I guess that we can call that the little sales part of this. Is I like to think of myself as, trying to take the time for sitting with people that maybe other people don't get the chance to sit with, and at least understanding what they could do better. So that way the people that are out there that are like, man, Dina just never responds. Well, it's like, because you didn't let her know that you're excited her team is now 40% females. Where was that, right? You didn't say anything about, or you didn't even notice, we'll say, when your entire team went to DEF CON, right? Did anyone mention or email you saying, hey, I saw these pictures of you guys at DEF CON. Looks like a great team. Like, no one does that. They just like blast an email and say whatever. Mm-hmm. And hopefully she responds. If it was me, I'd probably say, hey, this is actually really cool. I have 2 daughters. I'd love for them to get into cyber at some point or in tech, right? I really appreciate what you're doing. I think from a perspective of the number of women in cyber versus men, there is a strong tendency for it to be a man in leadership roles. And I think what you're doing is great, and I see my daughters at some point, hopefully making it to your level. And it's like, and I really appreciate what you're doing to help build your team to be more, not necessarily, more inclusive, right? Okay.
Yeah, I definitely would respond to that.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's like most people say, oh, we see this or see that. Chances are you have this problem, worth a chat. And it's just very
generic.
Yeah. So the main thing most people...
I think it's the personal touch. But it takes time, right? Like you can't mass blast a personalized email. So I get it. It's tough.
But, here I am talking about personalization. And then when I messaged you, it was just like, hey...
Well, that's funny, but I saw Mike's episode and I'm like, okay. And then I saw Lester's and Kim's and Andy's and I'm like, I want to be part of it. I'm going to respond.
It looks fun, right?
Yeah.
I'm glad you did because, after listening to it, I think what I really appreciate is just that you agreed to come on, but it wasn't because, for whatever reason, it was like, oh, it's the coolest thing in town, which of course it is,
It
right?
is, yeah.
But it was because, you had listened to parts of the episodes, right?
All of them.
And you said, hey, like,
I listened to all of the episodes.
dang, that's a lot.
That is a lot of hours.
These episodes are like 2 to 3 hours a piece.
I know. Yes.
But I
I've
appreciate-
listened to all of them. I've gotten a lot out of all of them and listening to their stories. And to your point, even though we have an inner circle, in some cases we're a little guarded because of our roles. So getting to know a little bit about Lester's story and how he grew up, I don't know that that would have come up naturally in a conversation if I didn't hear the episode.
No. And what's really cool about that part right there is, one, I'm going to cut that out and say, well, look at what she said. Right.
That's awesome.
But on top of that there's the story about you wanting to be a CPA. Mm-hmm. And then there's that seed of confidence and self-doubt, and how, looking back, I think there's a lot of people that go through that right now that are saying, man, like I really, yeah, it's just, they look at the job requirements and they just don't apply.
Yes.
And I think, if anything, the one thing that people can take away from this episode is to look at your path and understanding the very beginning, where there was that sense of, I don't know, and having a mentor. So, like, who is your mentor? Do you have confidence issues? Are you looking at a completely different career path? And if you are, there's someone out there.
They can help you. They want to help you.
Yeah.
And nobody asks for help.
Now, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Right. But I guess the other side of it is like, well, here's a really good example, right, of Dina, who had this similar situation as you, and look at what she's been able to do. And my hope is that becomes enough motivation for someone to say,
I'm going to take a risk.
Yeah.
I'm going to reach out.
Yeah.
Like Kim, I think Kim had a similar story, and that a lot of people didn't reach out. It's like the ones that do, they're the ones that stand out.
Oh yeah. So he was at CactusCon, and I really liked his episode because the very beginning, I just like dropped it on him. I said, hey, you remind me of Uncle Phil.
I remember that.
And I think so at the time, I knew what I was thinking in my head, and he just started laughing. And then I explained to him. And then as I went back and I went to record it, or to edit it and kind of pull that part out, I realized that he didn't know what I was thinking. So what he was thinking of is I was comparing him physically to Uncle Phil, right? Oh. And I'm like, oops, no, that's not what I thought. But, he says, yeah, I wasn't sure where you were going to go with that, but you got me. I think were his exact words. And I watched it back. I thought to myself, oh man,
did I offend him?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think I was on the path to offending him without realizing it, because in my head, I knew where I was taking it,
Sure.
So now I've been trying to be more aware of the things that I say. But yeah, that, every episode, I think there's a little nugget somewhere for someone to hopefully get something from people that otherwise may not share. And maybe for you, maybe it's the story of the start, right? Is where the journey started, but it all started with a mentor, right? A mentor that pushed and believed in you. So I guess that kind of leads me to the next thing is mentoring, right? There's past guests have been involved with ASU, Boise State, I believe, U of A, ASU. I think I said ASU. So there's a lot of people doing things at the local college level. Are you doing that? Are you interested in it? Like where?
Yeah, I'm interested in it, but I haven't yet had the opportunity to get involved in that. But we do have a women in tech employee resource group that I'm participating in. I'm actually having Jean Shapiro come in, and I'm interviewing her.
Oh, from
Achieve.
Achieve.
I worked with her at American Express, but maybe funny story, maybe not. I admired her from afar, right? Like I was so intimidated to try to talk to her because you put these executives who are just people on pedestals, but they want to help, right? Mm-hmm. So I reached out, and she's going to come talk to our team.
Oh, she's going to come in.
Yeah.
Okay, so she'll be there. Okay, I've I don't know her personally.
Yeah.
I've seen her at a couple panels, right? I think I tried to connect with her one time. She just never responded.
I can connect you too.
Okay. Well, see, I was at I Elevate IT,
Yep.
where she was a panelist, and I just went there with my camera. Much like next week, I'm going to be at the Tech Summit, and I'll be there, and I'll just have my camera, and pretty much everyone presenting is someone that I either know, that I've spoken with, or they know someone that I know, right? So
Yes.
it's like a second degree type of thing. And I said, hey, like I'll be there. I got in, and I reached out to the person on LinkedIn that manages the summit. I said, hey, like I have friends presenting. Do you mind if I take a camera and get pictures of them so they can share it on their socials or whatever? Like just as like for free. Like it's actually that lens right there, that big white lens you see.
Nice.
I'll have that with the other camera that's behind my desk.
Come with your smile.
Yeah, I'll bring the smile, right? And I just do it for fun, right? I do it for free because most people forget about photography. But then when people try and think of things that they've done in their life, they usually have a cell phone photo, but it's of what they took. It's not of them. Like
Yes.
my phone has pictures of my kids, my wife,
Selfies.
0 selfies.
Oh, really?
My phone literally has 0 selfies.
Oh, okay.
I never take a picture of myself. And so for me, it's like if I was at an event doing something and someone took a picture of me, like a candid photo, I'd be like, that's actually pretty cool because it's a professional picture, right? Because of the camera quality. But it's a picture that I wouldn't have gotten on my own,
Absolutely.
right? And I'm not going to give my phone to someone and say, hey, take a picture of me talking to this person because that's just
Yeah,
weird,
it is weird.
right? So maybe it's more so my personal thought of it'd be really cool to get a picture of me doing something cool or like talking with someone, laughing with someone. Like you just can't get that by taking out your phone like,
Yes.
hey, let's laugh together. And then, hey,
I
right?
definitely think that's considerate of you. Yeah.
Right? So it's like my way to help people
Give back.
kind of give back, but capture something that they otherwise wouldn't get unless they paid for it.
Sure.
So I'll be there with my camera. They say, oh, by all means, bring whatever you want. We'd love to have you do that and, share it with us. And we'll be sure to tag you as the person. So, okay, cool. So that's what I did with Elevate.
Yeah.
I'll be there. I think it's next Wednesday or Thursday, on the 12th. So I'll be doing that. But I guess, going back to Jean is, I try to connect with her and then it just never, and my whole reason for connecting was, hey, I'm going to be here taking these pictures. And I think I still have her pictures. I just never gave them to her. Right.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Let her know. Hopefully I still have them. I say I have them, but maybe I don't because I've been going through because, these things take up a lot of space.
Sure.
So she'll be coming in. As far as like mentoring though, maybe this is like a bad question because it might just have a line of people trying to.
No, honestly, I will say the mentors that I have, like either I have or I'm mentoring, you don't even say you're a mentor. They're just somebody who comes to you, right? Like, and asks you for advice and you're there and you check in on them. Or, I send texts to my mentors. Now, they might not consider themselves a mentor, but I do. Mm-hmm. I reach out and share an update or see how they're doing or send them a picture of my kids or, just. So I feel like when it's forced, it just doesn't work.
Okay. So it's be more so like relationship based.
I mean, for me, that's how it's been.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think, let me see, how do I want to say this? I wouldn't say people that I speak with are mentors personally. I would say a lot of people that I speak with don't realize that they might check the boxes of mentors in the form of, say boosting me, right? There are certain people that I will text and say, hey man, love this episode, keep going. And I'm just like, oh, that's cool. Or there's people that I'll talk to and they'll tell me something and I'll think, oh, okay, how can I apply that? They're more so like friends, right? But I wouldn't necessarily call them a mentor, but they do things that maybe people would consider a mentor would do.
Sure.
So I guess my next question for you is, and I have a very specific reason for asking this is, and I don't think you've seen it because it was on Chris's episode, which is episode 5. There was a gentleman that he worked with 7 years prior that he had helped, just helped. Very much kind of like you with you and Gene from afar, right? Maybe a little bit different because he worked with this person. Sure. And since departed ways, never really spoke, right? Never really had much of a conversation. We're aware of one another. The person came back 7 years later and said, hey, I want to thank you for what you did, right? And what people watching the video can't see was how much he lit up when he told this story. And I saw it because he's 5 feet away from me, and I saw it. So he told us, about how he was excited and how it helped, it essentially made him feel good. But he didn't say that, but I saw it in the way that he spoke, right? So then I cut him off politely. And I said, you know what I saw when you described this? And I said, there was like a shining in your eyes, and there was a big, you had this smile. There was a sense of like accomplishment almost. And you can't see it in the video because I didn't zoom in on him. I went wide angle shot, which is the center camera. He actually shed 2 tears. So there was a part where he had a tear come down on his left eye. And then there was a part, I kept going. I kept talking about it. And I kept talking about how it made him feel or how I perceived it. And, he didn't obviously he didn't cry, but there was, like these tears that came out. And I feel like part of that was he felt like I actually understood what he felt, right? The same thing with Vegas Mike, when we talked about his son, giving him the jersey and thanking him. Like really the first time, someone that he loves, his family, has sat down and said, I'm here because of you, right? So my question to you is, who in your journey could you confidently say, I am here because of you? And not only who they are, but have you thanked them?
Yes. So that answers, there's 2 people.
Okay.
The first one's Fred Gibbons, who's the CISO of American Express. And I did actually reach out to him probably in the last 4 weeks to say thank you just randomly. I was actually listening to Kim's episode, and at the end, he was mentioning Fred and some other local, I want to say celebrity CISOs.
We'll call them celebrities.
Yeah.
We'll call them celebrities.
And so I had reached out and said, hey, I don't know if you've heard of this podcast before, but I was listening to this episode and they mentioned you, and I just wanted to reach out and say how grateful I am that you gave me an opportunity. You believed in me before I believed in myself. And he responded that's the nicest, it was unsolicited. He wasn't expecting it. But Kim mentioning him just reminded me about the importance of saying thank you.
Yeah.
And the other person, he's Neil DeSwanee. He used to be my CISO when I was at Norton LifeLock. He really poured into me.
Okay.
He really provided me a bunch of opportunities. He gave me an executive coach for a year.
Really?
He challenged me. Yeah, unbeknownst to me, how the industry is so small. So at Amex, I went into this advanced computer security certificate program at Stanford, and Neil was actually one of the teachers. Now, I didn't know that, right? I just applied for the position at LifeLock. I met him. He asked me a little bit about the program. But when I saw him in person, I knew he was the teacher. I'm like, wow, this is such a small world. Didn't know you were CISO for a company headquartered in Tempe. You're teaching at Stanford.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think we had an instant connection because of that. Mm-hmm. But he really believed in me and gave me so many opportunities and really accelerated my career.
Yeah, I think there's everyone that has had a successful career can look back and pinpoint 1 or 2 people and say, and interestingly enough, Vegas Mike said it the same way because he described someone that gave him a shot. He said someone believed in me enough to give me a shot. And I really like that question because This is something that, Chris and I talked about, is men in technology are less likely to, men in general, right? So I'm going to tell you a funny story. Well, maybe not funny, but a story that sticks out in my mind is the same buddy that got me into tech, right? I talked to him last night when I was at Sprouts buying groceries, and he wanted me to come to meet him somewhere. I was like, hey man, it's late. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm tired. I don't think I'm going to make it. He's all right, cool, man. Well, I love you, dude. I'll talk to you later. Okay. Right. And it's just how I react. I was like, oh. But the first time he said it, what do you mean you love me? Right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't think I've had anyone ever tell me that. Besides
Other
from
than your family, right?
Other than my family, right? And it's like, oh, okay. Like here's another. This is actually a funny story, and this is the one that I get reminded of constantly. Right? There was a time where I was my now wife. We were dating, and I was dropping her. I drove her to work because at the time she was working, and I dropped her off at the front of the building, and she said, "I love you." And I'm in my car, and I'm like, and my initial response was, I said, "You're loved." I said, "You are loved." And then she just looked at me and like gave me this weird look and said, "What?" And then I love you too. So it was the weirdest thing, right? For me, because I don't know, it just happened, right? That was a case where she always reminds me of that. So I am never allowed to say the words "you are loved." Right. Yeah. But if I want to like joke with her and make her mad, say you are loved. Right. Yeah. So anyways, like it's just the idea that men don't do that in general. In my entire life, I'm almost 40. I've only had one other man tell me that he loves me. Right. And it's something that I thought about, and something that, I really touched on with Chris is this idea that as men in tech, or men in general, there is a low tendency to tell another man how you feel, right? Maybe it's frowned upon, right? I think women are generally more empathetic and more understanding, and they tend to do it more often without realizing it. But maybe as men, there's this stigma around it, so you don't see it as much. And it got me thinking about the idea of how many people have been in leadership roles that have helped other people, much like Chris did, and unbeknownst to them have made an impact, but were never thanked, right? And how much joy could they have had if they had known, right? And not only known, but what I told Chris was before they had passed, right? And it's like, how many people have made an impact on someone else's life, much like Fred, and maybe you would have thanked him at some point, but maybe you wouldn't have. And like you said, it was like the best message he'd ever gotten. And either he gets what I call the flowers now while he's alive, or he gets them when he's dead. And usually people, when they go to funerals, they have this monologue in their head, right? They don't ever speak out loud. You'll see people at a casket and they just sit there for 5 minutes. But they're talking, sure. And they're talking to the person that they wished they would have talked to before it was too late. So that's just an idea that I've had. So now I kind of like asking that question because it gets people to think like, you're right. I move so fast that I haven't taken the time to sit and think about who is responsible for me being successful. So Fred definitely is one of them. And I like to ask that too, because then if in the case like with you, where you say you hadn't told Fred, now we get like a cool little clip.
Absolutely.
That we could take and say, hey, Fred.
I might text him on my way home.
I might text him and say, hey, we just got a clip of me thanking you.
Yep, a meal too. Yeah.
So that's what's cool about, what I really enjoyed about recording these episodes and kind of, publishing them is that there are a lot of things that because we're so busy, because we have so many directions that were being pulled. No one ever really sits down to talk,
Agreed. You're just running.
but no one ever really sits down to talk as part of it, but then to actually think about why or who has contributed to their success. And then if they haven't done that, they definitely haven't thanked them. So if anything, another little
That's a
thing,
great nugget.
right?
For others.
Yeah, is that yes, you get to learn from these people, but much like with Kim's episode, it kind of got you to reach out to, when was the last time you spoke with Fred?
I try to keep in contact with him, but not at any sort of regular cadence. Usually a text here or there, or, I'm at a local event of CISOs trying to see why he's not there.
Where are you at? I need a friend.
Roasting him a little, but he's super busy.
But so was this the first time you had ever thanked him? Well, that's cool.
It took me 15 years or so.
Yeah, but it's like the
Better late than never.
but as Drake would say, do you know what Drake would say?
No.
No, you know who Drake is though, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, never. What did you say? Never. Say it again, because I have to sing it. I have to sing it in my head.
Better late than never.
But Drake would add, "But never late is better."
Exactly.
Right. It's a song.
Yeah.
So whenever someone says "never better late than never," I always think of Drake.
Nice.
Not that I'm telling you that it was bad, but it's in my mind associated to this song. But I really enjoy that because it's Kim and I just talking, two strangers, right? But it got another
Listener.
reasonably stranger to reach out to someone else that I don't even know. Didn't even know who Frank was. I heard his name, but never looked him up. And it's almost like maybe these conversations help people thank one another. And before people retire, before they pass on, before they, exit the game of cyber or tech, they feel like a sense of accomplishment because they can look back at someone. So, for example, Vegas Mike mentored Manrod,
Oh, wow.
right? And he even told me, I haven't talked to him in years, but now we have a monthly call. We have a monthly call on the calendar where we just connect. I said, really? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, oh. So that's, it's almost like people are
Reconnecting.
Yeah. So maybe I'm just...
You're playing a part, for sure.
I'm the CISO whisperer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe. But I feel like that's just way off track. I know there's and that's the thing is there's not necessarily like an agenda, but there's certain things, but then we just kind of just like fall off the edge and we just go.
Well, Manrod's like the Kevin Bacon, right, of cybersecurity here.
You can never have too much bacon though.
True.
Right?
Yeah. Everyone knows.
Which is interesting because I didn't like I said in the first one or one of the episodes, I didn't know who he was.
Oh.
You could.
You had no idea? Wow, you picked a really great person to connect with first.
Yeah.
He's so well connected and respected here locally.
Well, I'll tell you this, and if Mike listens, and I think he listens to all of them,
Right.
but some of them are pretty long, and this one's like 5 weeks away before it gets released. But Mike is kind of the person that pushed me, right? In a way that maybe he didn't realize, right? So if Mike's listening or he's watching, right, this is for you, Mike, because when I met him at a CSA event, I was introduced to him by a lady that I know that works at Armis, IT/OT security, because we had worked together in the past with another client, and when she was at a different role, and she said, "Oh, do you know Mike?" So he walked up because he knew her, and he introduced us. And of course, I have this lens, this camera across my chest, and so we started talking about video and photography, and then I learned that he's interested in doing an online course. And I asked him, well, how are you going to record it? I don't know. So I asked that question, and then he's like, I have no idea. Honestly, I'm not really a photography or video guy. And I look down on my camera and I say, well, I can help you with it. Really? I said, yeah, Mike. So then that's how I got into TSU.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
So I went to TSU every Wednesday at 5:30. I drove an hour up there, sometimes an hour and a half because of traffic, and then an hour back. And then the course is an hour and a half. So from 5:30 to 7, I usually leave at 4 and get home at 8 every Wednesday. And I would record every single session, right? And then I thought to myself, I should really do like a podcast. And then I built all of this.
Amazing. I didn't know that. I knew the Tisu connection, but I didn't know the whole back.
Yeah. And then, so I built all this in the warehouse behind us, right? So I bought these giant slabs of wood and I cut it all, did all the work, painted it, did all, the lighting, set up all the cameras and did all of it. And actually, interesting story is, and, I don't get, I don't feel bad about telling these stories over because it's not like there's like 100 people hearing the same thing or even 500 people hearing the same thing over and over. It's a very small handful of people. So they love my retelling of these stories, but these green screens behind us were actually a result of me wanting to help Mike because I thought if I can build a studio, I want to have a background that's unique, which is these are, right? I built these. You're never going to see anyone else with this setup because they're not good with wood like I am and, designing this, right? But my thought was if I can build a background that has some sort of angle to it that kind of converges on the center, it would get people to look towards the center, right? And that's why
That makes sense.
It's right around the head level, right? Your head, if I'm looking at you, I'm kind of drawn to the center, right? And so if you sit in front of the green screen, like much like I am right now for you, I can put a logo behind me. And my thought was, if I put TSU back there, right? If I put GCU back there,
Sure.
I don't have to have one background. I can have any background that I want as long as I can get an image, right? So that's kind of where the background came from was if he's in here with his computer presenting, the gear is set up to where I can record his screen while he talks on the cameras. So we have these 3 angles of him talking, teaching, but then also recording his screen. And then I would bring these walls in. And as I bring them in, when I get the cameras from each angle, I can get a background or a shot that's different from the other. It almost looks like a mirror image, but it could have the GCU or then it could have the TSU or it could have Actra. It could have all these different things. So that's kind of, like I said, Mike kind of pushed me in the direction of, how to thoughtfully build something that has multi-purpose use, right?
That's great.
So thank you, Mike. That's how we get here, right? We talked about mentors. We talked about thanking them. Talked about, getting involved, right? And like you said, you haven't had too much of an opportunity to do it, but I imagine, something else that's interesting too is being at a Fortune 500 company, right? Is there a level of, self-doubt that comes back, kind of like the CPA days where you kind of think to yourself, I don't know, right? Like there's if anything happens at a small business, no one cares, right? And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just the truth, right? When you think of a large breach or you think of an incident or things that happen, it's usually the Targets, the Home Depots, it's all these different places. You'll never really hear about Joe's
Mom
Crab
and Pop,
Shack.
yeah.
No one. It's not that they don't care. It's just that there's not as much.
Or awareness.
There's not much press that. There's only so much you can sell, right? But if you say, "Hey, this company was popped," or "This company happened this," right? They were breached here. You sell a lot more, right? It's all about sales
Sure.
at the end of the day. And one thing that I've always thought about is the amount of pressure, the amount of stress, the amount of heartburn, headache that goes along with knowing the responsibility that you bear. How does that affect you in your personal life?
That's a good question. Yeah, I definitely feel a sense of pressure to be perfect. And that over time is exhausting. And I do think it bleeds over into my personal life. Like you mentioned, I have 2 toddlers at home and a husband. And I try to be present, but my mind, I hate to admit this, is elsewhere. It's on what I need to do next or what other project I need to work on. Like I'm not in the moment, like at times, always, especially during weekdays. So it's something I'm like trying to work on, to like leave my phone in another room so I could be present and not just physically be there. But it's something I'm still working on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty tough.
I have to work on it too. And I have an idea how old your kids are, but we don't have to say it, right? But I'm thinking back to all the pictures I have on my phone and all the pictures of my kids that I have. There's no pictures of me, right? There might be one or two, but it's because my daughter likes to take my phone and take pictures of me. I've opened my phone up to pictures of me sleeping.
Oh, nice.
Right? It's just like random pictures or
pictures of the TV.
Yeah, and then her like this, with a selfie, and then some of them her like this next to me sleeping. But the one thing that I wish I would have done more of was take pictures of my kids, right? So now they're 8 and 11, so a lot older. They talk back and they're starting to, but they're kind of becoming who they will be. But as a father, I've spoken about this before, is I focused on work a lot more than probably I should have.
Same.
Right? And for me, there's less time to save me because the time is past. Right? For you, there's still a shot. There's still a chance. So just as a parent, right, that's been along this journey, right? We talked about learning from other people's experiences. There's one thing that I could tell you that hopefully might resonate is to get as many pictures and as many videos of your kids when they're small. Because the one thing that I can't do today, if my kids ask me, is I can't go back and find videos of them laughing, crying, fighting. I have pictures, but I don't have the videos because I usually just take the picture and move on, right? Take a picture, back to work, right? Take a picture, back to this. Take a picture, customer call. So pictures are a lot more convenient for me. And 10 years later, 7 years later, I look back and I think, man, I really wish I would have taken more videos because your kids aren't old enough, or at least I don't think they're old enough to ask you for your phone to look at your pictures. But mine have. And the first thing they always want to go back to are their videos. And I only have 7 or 8 of them.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah.
Right? So as your kids grow older, I know you have one son and one daughter, they will want to see their pictures, right? But they will get a lot more fun, and you will see a lot more laughs, and you'll hear a lot more laughs, and you'll hear, I think you'll have a lot more fun looking back at their childhood with videos, right? Because my kids always want to see the same videos over and over.
Yeah.
I could explain the videos to you that I have of them, but it's less than 8. And I have 2 kids, right? My wife has way more because she was home with them all the time. But I would say, not tech related, not work related, just parenthood related, is to get as many pictures, of course, but to really focus on the videos, because the one thing that I can't do is create video out of nothing. And the one thing that I can't recreate is my oldest daughter laughing or singing, right? And as I get older, I won't be able to remember it as well. But then the other side of it is, as they get older, they're going to want to see it and relive those moments of their childhood that they have no remember. Yeah. So that's the thing, is they won't remember doing any of this stuff, but you will. But if you have a video, it'll help them remember. And if not remember, at least appreciate, when they were singing Trolls, right? Yeah. When they were singing the songs of, either the one that I have a video of is Trolls. I have another video of my wife kind of not spanking my daughter, but like tapping her on the butt. And there's like a 3-second delay. And then she jumps on the floor and starts crying. And we always laugh at that because it's like, you weren't even hit, but it registered like 3 seconds later, and then you found a way to jump on the floor and start crying. And then it's her crying, right? And there's another one where my daughter sings. We purchased a poodle, but there was no way that my wife could take care of the dog just from like energy and health related stuff. So we had to give back the dog to the lady that we bought it from. So my youngest daughter at the time, she sang a song that I got on video where she's saying, I say bye to Abigail, and you say bye to Abigail, which was the dog's name. But like I said, there's only a handful of videos. So if there's one thing, hopefully that is not tech specific, it is to
Capture.
capture as many videos. And I tell this to every new parent that I meet, because it's almost like my way to help them not go through the same outcome, right? Like as a parent, there's a certain level of guilt for not doing certain things. And that's probably one where I blame a lot of it on myself. And I blame a lot of it on work. Because when you're in a sales role, you're chasing the number. And when you're a single income household, it's either you or them, right? And I say them as in like competitors.
Sure.
Someone's going to win, right? And so either I win or they win. And if I lose, it's less, it affects the family, right? So, the beast that is sales, which I've done my best to understand as much as I can, is also the beast. We'll say the sword that benefits is the same that cuts, right? But it doesn't have to be that way, right?
Yeah.
So the one thing, videos.
I like that. Yeah.
Videos are key. I'm trying to think of some of the other things. I think it was a really short list. And I think, one of the areas that I don't understand very well, like I mentioned, is GRC. Something you know very well, or at least, from early on. And if you listen back to some of the episodes, you'd probably think, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, right? You didn't get that?
No.
Okay, because I felt that way. Oh. And as I've gone through, now that we're on 11, on episode 3 or 4, I'm much less, in what I know or how I speak about it, right? I'll give you an example. I describe GRC as a grenade. Right?
Yeah.
And then, man, when I went back for that episode, like, I can't believe I said that, but it was what I thought. And I think of grenade in the sense that, like, it's something that no one wants to catch when it's live, right? And then I'm sitting there thinking about it, and I think to myself, there was one person that did catch a grenade. It was Captain America, right? If you're into Marvel, or Captain America, for that matter. And I thought, man, like, it takes a special person to catch a grenade. And maybe it takes special people to go into GRC, because it's not the typical route, right? Which is kind of the route that you've taken, right? And we've seen kind of where it's gone. So then I had like this new thought about GRC of like how it's not the typical beaten path. And if it's not the typical beaten path, there's a lot more opportunity for people to get involved that they may not be aware of. So now I've tried to focus more so on speaking with people in the GRC role or having a background in it to hopefully, shed light to an area that people may not be aware of and talk about it to help, drive maybe traffic there, even if it's 1 or 2 people, right? You get more people there. And maybe there's a Dina out there that's a CPA, looking to be a CPA and doesn't know. And someone says, hey, I heard this thing about CPAs getting into cyber. Have you thought about cyber? And then, in 20 years, someone could have, a similar career path to you, right? And maybe it all started with me just reaching out to someone in GRC. And that's how I kind of look at it. And, realistically, I try and have as much diversity in the group of cyber. But I think more so now I'm with Bindi, that was her background. And that's part of why I reached out, is because I feel like I have a lot to learn, but I can't learn it on my own. And hopefully when people come in, I can become just a little bit better every single episode. So I thank you for coming in, because I think it Shine's a really, she had a very similar story, not CPA, but hers was more so legal specific, right? She actually wanted to do a bunch of things that her dad said, maybe you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Right. And she mentioned this on a prior podcast
I think I heard
to her coming into mine. But, I learned from that and I get better and better and better. So I guess the next thing that I kind of want to touch on is less so past, right? More so future. Like, there's really not a good way to ask, but kind of where do you see your position today relative to where you want to be overall? Because 20 years ago, you would have said, I just, want to do a CPA. I want to work at a Big Four. But now you're here, right? Where do you see it going? I'll say the next 10 years. Because 20 is a little bit farther to see, but like you've kind of reached a point in your career that a lot of people will take a lifetime to get to. So where do you go now? What do you do?
Yeah, I think life like after CISO, I'd love to be like on a board of a public company. That's really my goal and aspiration. I don't know that I'll get there in 10 years. Again, maybe that's the self-doubt coming in, but at least maybe being a CISO advisor to a venture capital firm or just trying to give back. That's how I answer it now. Like, I don't know. I don't think I've ever stopped and thought about 10 years from now. I'm just in the daily grind, right? And I'm trying to be a little bit more intentional with our time. Mm-hmm. We only have 24 hours a day, and I'm obviously not using my time wisely. And so I'm trying to be more intentional about juggling the personal and professional. So that's my answer now. Like, love to be on a board of a public company and contributing to a corporate strategy. I don't know if it's possible in 10 years, but certainly within 20.
Well, why would you say it's not in 10?
Again, I think it just goes back to maybe self-doubt.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've never been in that position to be an advisor on a board of advisors, right? So I could just say it's easy, right? But I don't know anyone that does it. But I did see that you are an advisor for a company. Maybe how did that happen?
Actually, it was about a year ago. I attended a local Avanta conference. Just got an invite and said, "This sounds fun. I don't really get out much."
The
and
Gartner, the side of Gartner that does. Okay, yeah.
And that's actually where I first met Mike. And I ran into Gabby Vitale. She's also a great mentor. She was also a CISO at American Express. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, "Hey, Gabby, haven't seen you in forever. Don't know if you remember me. Worked at American Express."
Oh, no.
For Fred.
You said that?
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember me.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Well, because again, like I was so early on in my career, it's not like I had interactions with her.
It was more so like hall passing?
Or like, "Hey, I go to your town halls. You're the one speaking, and I'm just somebody in the audience."
Just two eyes out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and of course she's like, "Yeah, I remember." And she said, like, "Don't doubt yourself. Like, you need to get out there." And so I went to a round table, and she actually talked to the Avanta community manager about getting, underrepresented, like more females on the governing body. And that's how I got the opportunity. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I've reached out to a bunch of people on that board.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think I've had much success, though.
I can help.
Okay.
Yeah, happy to help.
Because I thought, there's a reason these people exist on this board.
Yeah.
But what's the chance that they've actually sat and spoken about, their stories? And actually, I think that's actually one of the ways that I found you, because
Yes, I saw. Yeah, that's how you messaged me. I think you said, "Hey, I'm looking for more Avanta members other than Mike."
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm looking for number 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So I have a monthly call with Deb Bond.
Oh, nice.
Right. Just to talk.
I worked with her at LifeLock.
That's how I know. That's that's actually how you first came up. I was telling her about the podcast and what I was trying to do. And I said, "Yeah, I'm just looking for people if you know anyone." She's like, "I know tons of people. Do you know Dina?" And I said, oh, yeah, I think I've heard of her. I was thinking of Dana.
Oh, okay.
I
You
remember,
know her from early morning or?
yes, in a way, kind of. I saw that she had come from early morning.
Yes.
And I figured that she was a transplant. And I was like, oh, I know Dana. Yeah, I know Dina. Never really spoke with her, right? Like one-on-one. And then I'm looking up and I find Dana and I'm like, maybe I'll talk to her. Dana doesn't know Deb from online. I was like, well, this is kind of weird. How does Deb know someone that,
Doesn't know her.
yeah, right? And it wasn't that I didn't believe Deb. It was just like, oh, okay. Well, normally if you know someone, you connect with them. So then I did some more digging and then I saw that you were there. I was like, oh, this is Dina, not Dana. And that's in my head. That's the funny story of how I came to realize that Deb knew you, because Norton LifeLock, right?
Yeah.
LifeLock before,
Yeah.
then Norton LifeLock back in, I think it was like 2016, 2017 maybe.
Now Gen Digital.
Gen Digital, after the other company that they merged
Okay.
with. Yeah, I actually reached out to the AI guy.
Oh, okay.
It starts with an H. I have to double check. I've been making my way around, like just trying to talk to people. But I was like, oh, Dina. And then I went and I was like, oh, yep, okay, we're good. And then that's when I sent it. But yeah, I think when it comes to these circle of people, right? When it comes to giving back to the community, I think everyone wants to do it. There's not really a way to do it, or like an easy path for people to do it. So maybe that's where this comes into play too. Is this is a way for people to be aware of what you'd like to do. I would say in 10 years though, I think you have to give yourself more credit for what you can do.
Sure.
Right? Because a year and a half ago, I wasn't doing any of this stuff. I actually quit my job.
I didn't know.
I just quit. I wasn't happy with some of the things that had happened and the situation that I was in. Financially, I was taking a big risk, and I had justified it in my head that I was taking a bigger risk by staying, right? Because of the plates that I had spinning at the time. I ended up being right. I would have, had a really bad outcome had I stayed, based on what I know now. So, but I left and I just quit, and I had no idea what I was going to do, right? No plan. I had some thoughts about what I would do, but podcast wasn't on it, right? It was only after a year of just like feet on the street grinding that you realize that it's really hard to do anything in the tech world without an established brand. And that's when I decided, you know what? If they don't want to talk to me about this stuff, maybe they'll talk to me in another setting. And then this was a thought that I had. And then I met Mike. And then that kind of set me in this other direction, right? It's so weird how things happen.
Yeah.
And then now I'm sitting across from the one and only, right? The one and only Dina Mathers, right? And it's weird to think that I am sitting in this chair with you across from me. Like I told the people, and I would have never guessed in a million years, or even 10, right? In this like example for you, in 10 years that I'd be where I'm at today, talking to people that I'm talking to. But I guess I believed. A small piece of me did. And even if I didn't believe 100%, having these people around me, like Mike and my family, say, that'd be really cool. I think you should. Much like you, like with Fred,
I think the mindset matters most. Right? If you think you can do it, you can certainly do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people that don't because they're afraid.
Yeah.
And but I also think it's because they don't have anyone there to
Encourage.
encourage them. So if we were to say that there are in 10 years, right, you'd like to be doing certain things, but like you said, you may not be doing it, but maybe in 20 years you'll do it, right? Mm-hmm. What are like some personal things that you'd like to do? Where not just where you'd like to do them, but where it like scares you to do them.
Is that a personal or a professional question?
Personal. right? Because I think professional is easy to do because you can go into a setting, like a work setting, and share, we'll say, like for Dana, you're in a meeting with Dana, and you say, hey, I'd really like to do this professionally. Do you know anyone?
Sure.
Cool. You go to these events and things. Hey, I'm looking at this. I feel like there's a lot more encouragement and support, especially in the security community, to kind of find your way into heights that you wouldn't have thought. But when it comes to personal life, there's a really small circle of people, arguably that you rely on to help push you. So my question is more so geared towards the personal stuff, because I think it's a lot easier, and you've shown it through your career by finding these outcomes and, where you are now because of the people professionally. So I'm more so curious on the personal, where, the things that it's like, man, I don't know if I'll be able to do that.
Yeah, there's two things that come to mind. So growing up, I loved writing, creative writing. And so I always had a dream to write a New York Times best-selling book. I've never said that out loud. Nobody knows that.
No.
Because once I say it, now I got to do it, right? Maybe you're encouraging me to
not only did you say it,
right?
You didn't say it. It's on video.
I know, right?
And you know what?
It's recorded.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a copy of that.
Oh, no.
And I'm going to send it to you.
Oh, no. Yeah, my secret's out. I don't even think I share this with my husband. I've just never said it out loud because I have so much doubt. It's can I actually do this? Mm-hmm. Will somebody want to read it? I haven't written other than professional emails or policies and standards in so long that you kind of get out of practice.
Yeah.
But I'd love to do that. But I, have a little bit of doubt. And then when, I don't know, back in 2014, similar to your health story, I loved running. I would get up every single day at 5 a.m. and run and, just competitively run. I've never done a marathon, only a half marathon. So I'd love to do that, but I don't do anything to make that happen,
Yeah.
Especially it's always just an excuse. I'm too busy at work. I have kids. When am I going to do this? But you make the time, right? So I'd love to run a marathon at some point. Just haven't done it.
Is a half marathon a 5K?
No, it's 13.1 miles. So I've done the P.F. Chang's half marathon ones.
Okay.
So that was great, but never did a full marathon.
And a marathon is what, 2 hours? Or half marathon's 2 hours or so?
I think I did it an hour and a half or so. I was in different shape back then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a full marathon is roughly 4 hours.
Yeah, I mean, probably longer for me, maybe 10 or who knows, right? I don't know. I hope I'd finish. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm so out of shape, but yeah.
Hey, me too. Why do you think I'm wearing this jacket?
Oh.
It covers me up.
Oh, boy.
It insulates me from
Let's be kind to
from
yourself.
things from things popping out. Okay. Well, so you've never mentioned to anyone that you want to write a book. So what would it be about?
I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if it's writing something about cyber, a CISO playbook or something. But then other times it's I started a book while I was in college, but I didn't get past the first chapter, and it's just a fictional book.
Okay. So I want to give you an idea.
What's that?
And maybe it'll inspire you.
Okay.
You have 2 kids.
Yes.
And they're at the point where they draw.
Yes.
Color.
Yes.
What if you wrote a book about an undercover agent in the cybersecurity field that was a kid, right? Mm-hmm. And then so you find a way to kind of tie that to maybe this kid knows more about. Oh, maybe here's an idea. Maybe the kid knows more about cyber than the people that work in the community, as in the current CISOs at places. Essentially, it's a kid prodigy, right? It's a prodigy of cyber. Doesn't realize it, and we're gonna make it a little girl, right?
Love that.
So we're gonna make a little girl who's a prodigy of cyber, but no one knows because she's a kid, right? So her goal is to share what she knows with the world without outing herself, because she's kind of undercover, right? And she does that through artwork, so, like Banksy, I think that's how you say it. The guy that goes around and does a graffiti in Europe. So kind of like that, she leaves her artwork out with ideas of cyber or certain things that people aren't aware of, right? Maybe vulnerabilities and things like that. But here's the cool part is the art in the book is drawn by your kids. So you write the story and then they draw the pictures. And then it's kind of like a family book. And then at that point, it doesn't matter if anyone reads it. That's true. Because you've made a book with your family, but it's ties back to what you know well, which is like, cyber security and things like that. But it's also maybe an inspiration for others because it's of a little girl, right, that knows more than the people that are in the current role. And I think there's a good story there because it kind of opens a door for other young women like my daughters to read it and say, well, maybe there's something here for me, when historically there's less representation. Yeah. Right. And maybe that it doesn't become like the bestseller, right? But maybe it becomes something where little girls can read it and say, you know what? Let me take a look over here.
I love that. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
That'd be an interesting
idea. I need to
idea.
do some soul searching.
Yeah, I think a book would be cool, but I think, having kids myself, being able to tie them into what I do, right, makes it even more meaningful. So and that's where that idea came from. Like, if I were to write a book, it'd be like a kid's book, because I think once you get past a certain age, it's hard to get someone to change their thoughts of their career, and it's less likely that a woman will go into cyber than a male, right? Just based on numbers today. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's something that if you did it,
like an introduction.
Yeah, it becomes like a way for like a little girl to say, oh, they attribute what they, have you ever seen the videos of like the little kids doing gymnastics from watching the Simone on TV, right? So maybe something like that, but not because you're on TV doing it, but more so like it's a book where they see, a little piece of themselves in the kid that's technically like undercover cyber expert. And the only way that they can communicate to the world is through code of like pictures. And then the cool part is like those pictures are, drawn by your kids.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that idea.
That's just one idea that I have.
Yeah.
So you could do a book and you can run a marathon.
I'm going to need to train to do that. But yeah, I can.
Well, how come you don't train?
They just excuse me.
Really? Yeah. The same. I know I need to go train. I need to go exercise, but sometimes I'm just like, okay, let me ask you this then, because this kind of takes me on a topic that I think about all the time. How often do you cook at home versus eat out? And I don't mean you personally cook. I mean like as a family, like either you or your husband.
Not often.
No?
No. I don't love cooking, so we order a lot of meals from Eat Clean. That's what I take in for lunch.
Okay.
And then, we eat out or if we have leftovers. But I have been trying to be better about cooking, but I mean, honestly, after work, I'm just exhausted. So
what time do you typically get home from work?
Oh, I like 5:30.
And you go in at like 7 or 8 or 6 or?
No. I get in at like 9:15. So I drop my daughter off from a preschool.
Okay.
And our nanny shows up at 8:30. With traffic, I get to the office about 9:15. I leave by 4:30. And then I work after the kids are asleep.
Oh, so you're like a 9 o'clock to midnight person.
Not midnight, maybe 10 or 11.
Interesting. Does that wear on you?
Yeah, I don't know that it's expected, right? But because I'm commuting, I kind of have the guilt about not working 40 hours. So that's just like what works for us.
Oh, okay. But if you do, I guess, so you essentially just translate your commute to late night.
Yeah.
If they don't do remote anymore, or
No,
no? Okay.
there's actually, 5 days a week in the office here.
Oh, okay. So for all the vendors listening, I'm talking to you. She's in the office. So if they're going to do anything that's thoughtful,
You can bring me a Starbucks.
yeah,
Yeah.
You could bring her something healthy because she wants to run a marathon. Help her with her marathon, right? Bring her something healthy because you're going to be there 5 days a week. It's in at 9.
Yeah.
I can't give away all the secrets, right? Well, marathon and a book. I don't know if I can help you with either, but I can give you an idea, and then maybe if the people that listen, you might just have way more Starbucks
Oh, God.
and healthy drinks at the office than you'd ever imagine. So, if anything,
Thank you for that.
maybe this will be the thing. Have you ever done Pat's Run?
I have not.
But you
I am a
Heard of
former-
it?
Yeah, I'm a former. Yeah, ASU, Go Devil.
oh, you did?
Yeah.
When did you graduate?
2007.
Oh, I was 2010.
Okay, I was going to guess 2009 because you said you graduated high school in 2005. I graduated 2 years before, so I don't
Okay.
know. I was trying to do the math.
Well, you see, the problem with me graduating high school in 2005 was that I didn't have a really good counselor in college. And what they didn't tell me was that I needed a certain course as a prerequisite to another course, which was only offered in the fall of the following year. So if you didn't take the prerequisite on the right path, then you had to wait a year.
Oh, wow.
So I got to be the lucky 5-year senior that only had like 2 classes my senior year, which were capstone and some other class. I forget what it was, but you had to have this prerequisite in order to go into the other one. And I didn't have anyone telling me that. And at the time, they didn't have a system that,
Yeah.
that did all that. So that's how I got to the lucky 5-year senior. But I've never been to an ASU game.
Oh, you should go.
I should. So I've never. So here's what's interesting about me is when I was at ASU, I was living at home with my parents. I was driving a motorcycle every day to ASU on the
Oh my
HOV
gosh,
lane.
how? It's so hot.
I don't know.
Weren't you sweaty?
So the interesting thing with bikes is if you wear like a mesh like jacket, you will sweat, but the air goes through, so it kind of becomes like a cooling effect. Most people don't realize that, obviously bikers are sweating in the sun, but the more coverage you are, the less hot you get because it's not direct like UV rays. Like imagine like you're in your car
Yeah.
and you roll the window down and put your hand out.
Yeah.
It burns a lot faster than it does if you keep it inside with the window tint. So there's that. So you always have to be covered up so you get less hot. But then when you are covered up, the clothes that you're wearing have to have, like a mesh or something. So as that sweat gets, stoplights are probably the worst thing as a biker because you're stuck there in the sun and you're sweating. But then as soon as you take off, it kind of cools you down. So I was in the HOV lane every day. I would park at the bike rack, the motorcycle bike rack next to the Barrett Honors College.
Okay.
Right. So you walk out, it's like right there by the little area. I always park there and then I walk to the MU and do all my stuff. I might just be the only person in the state that went to ASU that never attended a game.
Or one against U of A?
Never went to ASU game, ASU versus U of A. But here's the trifecta of how I know I am the only person. I never went to an ASU college party.
Okay, I have a story. I've only been to one frat party, and it was on Halloween. And I came dressed in a poodle skirt and walked out. I didn't even stay because I didn't know like Halloween was an excuse not to wear any clothes.
Yes.
I was so out of place. Yeah. Oh my! I never went to a party after that.
Okay. I was going to say Halloween as an adult. Well, Halloween as a college student is much different than the Halloween as a kid.
Yes. And I didn't know that. Nobody told me that.
So hang on. So when you went in there,
I looked like, Sandra from like Grease.
Okay.
Like all dressed up, very long skirt. Oh
my
gosh.
This is not the outfit for this party. But no one kicked you out.
No, but I was so uncomfortable. I just walked out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. What made you pick that outfit?
I don't know. I mean, I just went to what what is that? Not Arizona Mills. And I just got an outfit there just at a store, right? So
Okay.
I didn't have a lot of options. It's not like I went to Spirit.
Okay. I think that was a
anything.
problem.
Yeah.
Because if you went to Spirit,
Yeah, I probably would have realized what this
Halloween's a little bit different.
a little more spicy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Halloween is like it's you went in dressed as a jalapeno, but Halloween is like ghost pepper spicy, right?
Absolutely.
Especially at ASU.
I mean, I went like a bell pepper, you know?
You went as a there was no spice.
No.
Maybe you went
Not
as,
at all.
so the yellow? I think the yellow is a sweet and red is a sweet. I don't know. I never knew this. Did you know that? That like green peppers and yellow peppers and red peppers and orange peppers, the colored ones are actually sweet,
Oh,
or they have no spice to them.
okay.
So you didn't go in as a jalapeno.
No.
You went in as a yellow pepper.
Yep.
Spice level 0.
Negative.
Oh, -5. Yeah, I mean that I've never been to a Halloween party either. So you could tell that my life at ASU was very boring. Because if you're doing differential equations in 12th grade, did you grow up here or
No, I grew up in New York.
okay? What year did you come out here? Like, were you
2003. It was actually during the rolling blackouts on the East Coast.
okay?
My best friend dropped me off at JFK. I had 7 suitcases with my dad, and the automatic doors of JFK would not open. This is very odd. And you just see chaos, and my dad we stay there for 24 hours. No, no air condition, cots, warm bottles of water, and the next day, everybody in the tri-state area, so New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, was sent home so they can prioritize passengers
Oh wow!
from other states. So yeah, I was like, is this a sign I shouldn't go to ASU? But yeah,
And so, did he come out here with you?
yes.
So your father moved down here.
Oh no, he just
okay.
he just shipped me, to make sure
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
adjusting, that I wasn't homesick, helping me kind of get moved in. I actually decided pretty late I was going to go to ASU, so I didn't have a dorm room, but my parents bought a townhouse on Priest and University.
Do they still own it?
No, they sold it recently though.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
You say recently.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of all the money that they made because if they bought it. So here's the funny thing: the house of my parents, when we moved out into 1999, 2000. So I remember, Y2K. Right? Everyone's worried about what happens when the clock rolls over
Yes.
to 00. We were at my aunt's house in their basement having a New Year's party.
Yeah.
Like they lived out in the farm area. They had 50 acres, and we were at their house in their townhouse in their basement because it was like the playing area. So it's 99 crossovers to 2000. 1:00 in the morning, everyone's still safe. Okay. Shortly after that, we moved out to Arizona, and the house that we bought actually cost my parents $110,000. And at the time, they had the option to add in a basement for $20,000. And they didn't do it because they said, "Oh, this is too much money." Right? We came from Detroit, so $100,000 is a lot compared to what the houses were going for. And the house that we came from, they bought it for $17,000 before I was born. So they bought the house for $17,000 in Detroit. They sold it for $40,000 in 2000 when we moved, and they took all that money and they dropped it into the house that they bought out here for $110,000. I think it was like $111,000 actually, but $1,000 doesn't matter. That house now is worth almost $500,000.
Sure.
Right? Which is crazy to think that in 24 years, it's gone up 5x. So the reason I asked you if they still had it was because if they bought it in 2003, they bought it obviously before everything happened in 2008, but it was probably where it should have been. So there was did your dad ever thank you for that, for the investment that you helped him with, or?
I don't think so.
No. You got to go back and say, "Hey, I know this. You guys made a lot of money on this house, and because of me, because of my experience." Okay, so you came out here in 2003, went to ASU, showed up to an ASU Halloween party.
Completely unprepared.
Completely unprepared. What? I mean, so before we started recording, you said you weren't sure if you had any fun stories.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a pretty fun story.
Yeah, I don't think too many people know about it except my friends that were with me. Oh my gosh.
Did they walk out too, or did they?
No, they stayed.
They stayed? So
I'm like doing like the walk of shame, but just because I'm overdressed, right?
yeah, so they stayed. So were they really your friends if they didn't point out your outfit before you went?
That's a good question. Maybe
Because
not.
How were they dressed?
Yeah, appropriate.
They're appropriately? Okay. So they went in there, they were appropriate. They saw you.
It didn't say anything.
And they just let you.
Well, I mean, I guess in hindsight, right? I probably should have noticed when they picked me up how they were dressed. you know?
Yeah.
But I was just thinking, oh wow, that's an interesting choice of a costume.
Yeah, but what sticks out of my mind is they knowingly let you walk into that.
I mean, it was my decision, but yeah.
Do you still talk to them?
Yeah.
Okay, you should ask them if they did it to like get a good laugh, or if they just weren't thinking. If they were more worried about all the fun that they were going to have, that they didn't notice your outfit, or if they understood, 20 years ago, that when you went, that you weren't prepared for what was about to happen. Right.
I'll need to ask.
Yeah, I think that'd be a funny. They'd probably be like, "Oh yeah, no, we knew.
Probably.
We just wanted to see you."
Yeah.
So you leave, you take the walk of shame. At the time, there was really no Uber, right? So you had the long walk of shame.
Yeah, like a mile.
Okay.
But I mean, the weather's nice in October.
True, but there's a level of shame walking down Fifth
That's
Avenue.
true. In a poodle skirt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, we know it's Halloween, but is that? I would imagine people were guessing, like, if you meant to dress like that for Halloween, like, this is ASU. What are you doing? Like, you're the only person walking around
Definitely
with
out of
that,
place.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, ASU parties, never been to them. So like I said, never been to ASU game. Never been to ASU versus U of A. Vegas, Mike's son actually plays for U of A, right? And that's when he was coming through here, because he's got to go back to Vegas after the game.
Yeah.
So I think he's actually coming back, not here, but to Arizona this week, because they play NAU. The football team plays NAU this weekend. So he'll probably come through here with his parents' house, or his mother now, in Surprise, and probably go to NAU this week. But never been to ASU, never been to U of A, ASU, never been to a party.
You were no fun.
Never stayed in a frat house.
Yeah.
Yeah. My roommates, did I tell you who they were? My parents.
That's right. You said you lived at home.
My roommates were my parents. So we cover a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe this is a good point where I ask a question. Are there things that we haven't talked about that you'd like to at least touch on? I know leadership was one of them. Mentoring was part of it, right? I have the list.
Yeah, I think the only thing that comes to mind, but I don't know if it's a story to share, right? But being a female and cyber, right? You do have you're facing adversity, and oftentimes you're not sharing those stories because of shame or because of fear of being
judgment.
Yes.
Okay.
And so anyway, I just wasn't sure if I should share any stories just for awareness of things that happen. Mm-hmm. But
I think it's up to you. We've predominantly been male, right? And with Bindi, we kind of touched on that a little bit. If I remember correctly, I asked a question, and I might have pressed more than I should have, right? And it's just simply out of curiosity, right? My view on that topic is there are a lot of people in Congress that make rulings on things that they have no understanding of, right? And they will never understand. And frankly, biologically, will never have to deal with, right? But yet they seem to be okay with making certain decisions or making certain rulings on an area that they have no expertise in, right? And not to say that that's happening in tech, but I think there is a lot of underrepresentation, right, for women in the field. And when you stack that with even things that you shared around self-doubt, right? There is this idea of self-doubt stacked with the fact that there are less women in tech, far less in cyber, right? Predominantly male. I think my thought is I don't understand what it's been like for you. And I never will. But I can at least ask the question to understand. And it's a topic that, I told my wife about, the episode, and she said, well, that was a terrible question that you asked. And here's why. Right. So I went back with my wife and I talked to her about it, and I said, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I was just genuinely curious. And she's like, well, the way you worded it makes you sound like a fool. And you probably should have thought about
Or how you
phrased it, right? And I said, well, I mean, that's just me. I just kind of ones and zeros, ask it or don't ask, right? I don't necessarily think about the emotional context of these questions. So that was kind of like a learning experience, right? Overall, Bindi said it was, great. But, when I asked a question, I think she kind of said it would just kind of pass, right? And I think there was a level very similar to what you had said. There's this idea that if, things are said, that maybe it might not look the way that people want to be received, right? And to me, it feels kind of like a shame, because it feels like there's a lot of stories out there that don't ever see light. So this is what I'll say. Hypothetically speaking.
Sure.
Hypothetically speaking, which, by the way, is what Rich's panel is next week. I don't think, are you on the panel with Rich and them?
No, I'm just moderating a CISO roundtable.
Okay. So Rich's panel, and the reason I know this is because he was here, is called Hypothetically Speaking.
Okay.
And the idea with that is we're just hypothetically speaking.
Gotcha.
We're not naming names. We're not pointing out anything specific. We're not calling anyone out. Sure. We're saying hypothetically speaking. So these aren't your experiences. These are things that you might have heard. These are things that you might, based on context of your experience, what you might expect. None of this is true going forward. But hypothetically speaking, if you were to describe some of the things that you think women, females, need to hear, but also men should be aware of, what are those things that you wish you could share with them based on the people that you know, the stories that you've heard, hypothetically speaking, nothing that you've necessarily experienced?
Yeah, I think that the main takeaway that women need to hear, especially females entering the industry, and we touched upon this earlier, is just because you don't meet all of the qualifications, don't sell yourself short. Apply for the position, especially if you have a genuine interest, and ideally, hopefully, you know somebody who knows somebody who can get your foot in the door. Mm-hmm. I think that's what I would say to females, because again, there's a lot of self-doubt. Most women don't apply for jobs unless they meet 100% of the requirements. A lot of times, I don't even have female applicants for any of the jobs I have. That's unfortunate. And it's, general, I'm guessing I need to do a better job with job descriptions to make it more approachable for females. So I think that's what females that are early in their career need to do, is just take the risk and don't underestimate the power of networking. Find people that you can share those experiences with you, right? Because I think the problem is when a situation happens with a female and they feel silenced, it's hard because you're just suppressing it. You need an outlet if it's your husband, it's your best friend, to kind of share that. Because I'll admit, one thing that I wish I didn't do, but I have done, is cry at work, right? I shouldn't, sometimes I get let my emotions get the best of me, and it's because I'm passionate and there's a situation and I'll just cry. And I feel it's a sign of weakness, and it also diminishes what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And it kind of like loses credibility a little bit because, I've
Yeah.
had, colleagues like ask if I'm menstruating as an example.
Yeah.
So like if you don't have that outlet, then sometimes it shows up in places you don't want it to show up.
Yeah. I don't want to leave the topic, but I want to give you something that I read recently. So have you ever seen the show WandaVision?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So it's a Marvel show on Disney Plus. It's probably kid friendly. I watch it with my daughters. We watch all Marvel together.
Okay.
So whenever something comes out, we watch it, except for Deadpool. We haven't watched that with them. Any of the Deadpools. Just my wife and I will watch that. Star Wars too. I got my kids actually built those Lego sets over there. Oh, nice. So I bring those to the office, and there's a lot more at home.
Okay.
Entire rooms are filled with Legos. So WandaVision is essentially a story of two people that are in love. And towards the end, one of them has to die, right? And he's a robot, right? And he says a phrase that's fairly popular, and it is, and I'm probably going to misquote it, so I'll say that first. And it was something along the lines of like, pain is nothing but love enduring, right? Or grief. I think it was grief. Grief is nothing but love enduring, right? And so that's actually kind of, strong, right? In simple terms, like that actually is an interesting thought. So then I looked into where did this come from? What does this mean? And I found it. And what it was is there is a poem that talks about love, right? And it talks about, if I could summarize it, it says, tears are nothing more than love with no place to go. Right? And when you mentioned this story, I thought about it because, like, if you look at it from your perspective of, no, I'm not menstruating. No, I'm not PMSing, right? There is a level of passion. There is a level of love. And there isn't an outlet. Like you mentioned, you don't have an outlet. So where does it go? The love has to come out, right? And it comes out in the form of a tear, right? Much like this poem describes, where people, when they cry at funerals, it's love with no place to go, right? So you think of when someone dies, like you can't love someone that's dead. You can love the idea of them, but ideas can't feel, right? So when you take that idea and you say, tears are nothing more but love with no place to go, I think that maybe that's a better explanation. It's just like there is a level of passion and love for what you do. And when you don't have the ability to speak about it and how it makes you feel, it has no place to go but out in the form of a tear, right? So an outlet group, right, is definitely something. There are a few, but I don't think there's very many. Would you be interested in starting a group for women and kind of having that be like a mentorship?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's you've been giving me great ideas. I hadn't thought about that, but I'm sure. I know when I talk to mentors or share a story, that I'm not going to publicly share, it's kind of sad at times, like some of the behavior, right, in corporate America that just doesn't get talked about.
Yeah, and Lester talked about that too, right? He talked about in his episode how there were two ladies on his team, two women, right, where they were essentially being called out for something by another man.
Oh yeah,
man,
I remember that.
Right? I was like, and I think it's not that people don't talk about it. I just think that most people don't speak up about it. And I don't mean women, right? I think men too. I think Lester was a really good example of how he stepped in to stop it from continuing, right? But I don't know how many men would actually do that in a professional setting. And I think the outcome is, people, like you might feel that there's nowhere to share it. There's no outlet. Okay. I might know some people that would be interested in that, right? The nice part with that is there's no men around, right? No.
Fix it.
Yeah, I think it's just more so just being able to share it. Because I think, in a lot of ways, like, even me talking about the videos on my phone, right? I don't, like I said, less than 10. It's probably 7 or 8, if I were to guess, of specifically this, right? Of my kids. And it makes me think back like, man, I really wish I would have done more there. So I think in a lot of ways, talking about these things just helps us understand better our circumstance, but also, make better decisions moving forward because we're more aware.
Yeah, I know. I was listening to Bindy's the other podcast that you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember her sharing the story that somebody thought she was in sales.
Oh, when she was at Black Hat or something? Yeah.
And it's like, and like sometimes people just aren't kind, right? Like, there's like a preconceived notion, or
Yeah, they told her, I thought you were in sales. Like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I kind of am, but like, I'm a CISO. Like, what? You're a CISO?
yeah,
Like,
that is a reaction. So, 'cause I was at the Gartner Security Summit recently,
mhm.
sat down at a table having breakfast.
They were
Another
just,
female CISO. Where do you work? Like, what do you do? Told her, and like, wow, I'm really surprised. So, and then it's like, what do you say to that? Like,
well, why would she be surprised?
no idea why.
I'm surprised that women wouldn't, understanding kind of the situation or the circumstances that everyone, share collectively are dealing with, that they wouldn't kind of like reach out more. So let me ask you this. Do you know who all the female CISOs are in Arizona?
Not all, but I know some.
Do you know the lady from Discount Tire?
Ashley, yes.
Okay. Because I can't think of very many. I know of a handful.
Cindy, Ashley.
Hmm.
Those are the ones that
Those
are
are
like
the
my
ones?
go-to.
Okay. I think we need to find more.
Yeah.
I have like Zoom info, so I can find them all if you
Oh,
want.
okay.
But I think it would be interesting to have. So here's another idea too, and maybe you can tell me if you have interest in this. Is you haven't seen the warehouse, right? But originally, when I was designing this, I wanted to call it like aisle talk, like down the aisle,
Oh, okay.
and then have the camera set up to where it's down in like a physical aisle in the warehouse, right? Maybe we'll just convert my entire office to another podcast studio where you can have more than one person. Because in here, reasonably, you can't have three. I mean, we could have a table, like put that in the middle and then have another chair and make it work. It's really congested. His thought was having another room built out with 8K cameras, high-end stuff, very like what we have, similar to what we have here, maybe a little bit better, but doing it for like group settings, right? And I think maybe what came to mind when you mentioned this was bringing together other women in leadership roles. It doesn't have to be cyber, right? And whether it's me moderating or at the desk kind of helping with stuff, maybe kind of having that, because I don't think you come across that very often. And there's really, like you said, there's no outlet to talk about this stuff. But I have enough gear here that reasonably no one would buy on their own to do that. Or I'd be willing to put it together maybe in the warehouse in the wintertime when it's cooler out there. So it's kind of like and I'll show you before you go, it's like a cool setting where it could be kind of like shop talk, right?
Yeah.
My idea for this is to kind of expand it into engineering based and then leadership based, where I speak with an engineer, maybe someone that's like one of the most proficient engineers that are doing things that they want to share with the world, but there's really no outlet for it. And then having that be like a subset where it's like learn from an engineer, in the thick of it,
Oh,
right?
that's cool, yeah.
But then that's more so geared for engineers, has a special place for me. But then there's like, leadership and leaders in the world of tech. But then it could easily break into areas that are underrepresented within tech, right? So we'll just say this, like, if you have interest in that, just let me know. And maybe there's a way that I can facilitate it, because I already own all this stuff. So it wouldn't be hard to just take it off the wall and take it. And then maybe there's something there too.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for improvement, right? Because I don't know what I'm doing. To be honest, I'm just clicking buttons and just showing up and having fun and talking to people, wearing a suit jacket for the first time, passing number 10 to 11, right? Fortune 500 CISO in the building. I'm just a guy out here just walking and talking, right? So I guess with that, we'll save it for the next time. But the next time, what I want to hear from you, right, is I want to hear how many free healthy vendor stuff you got. Okay. I want to hear
Starbucks coffee.
Yep. That I want to hear about any more ideas you have for the book,
Okay.
right? Right. I might not be a mentor, but I might be someone that can help, just, hey,
What idea?
here's a book idea that I have. Want to hear about that? Hear about hypothetically speaking stories. And if you have any friends that want to come in, you know where I'm at, right? In Gilbert, right by American Furniture. So we talked about a bunch of things, people that have helped you, maybe a little bit of self-doubt, self-confidence, right? Even how it still exists today in some fashion, where you think about 10 years from now versus 20, right? There's a little bit of, it's still part of you, right? Mm-hmm. But I think if anything, if the one thing that your journey can show is that it can happen. Did you eat Happy Meals as a kid?
Yes.
So what do you know about Happy Meals?
There's a toy, or what?
What's the phrase?
I don't know.
You don't know the phrase?
No.
It could happen.
No.
You don't remember the kids on space? The kids flying? Kids riding dinosaurs?
I barely remember what I had for dinner last night, so definitely don't remember that.
Okay. It's the phrase for McDonald's Happy Meals when I was growing up was it could happen. So it's not about whether you can or whether you can't. It's the fact that it could happen. That, maybe another one you remember is Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
Did you remember the scene where they were talking and he asked for the number or something like that? And she said, maybe another time. And his response was, so you're saying there's a chance?
Yeah, yeah.
You know that scene I'm talking about? It's the same thing as so you're saying there's a chance? Yeah. So you're saying I could write a book? Yeah, there's a chance. I'm saying there's a chance. Right? Run a marathon? Yeah, that's there too. But maybe the only thing that needs to happen is just like that first step.
Yeah. I appreciate
that. Yeah. I'll remind you. I've got your number now.
Yeah. I know. No.
I'll be sure to save it.
Make sure you save it.
Okay. Well, I think maybe we can just end it there. I'll say, thank you again for coming in. Time flies when you're having fun. I hope that when you leave here, there's a couple of things that you'll think about that you haven't thought about in a while. It sounds like, at least thanking Frank and a few others, maybe there's a little bit of motivation from prior episodes. And I hope that people that listen to this, maybe they find a little bit of inspiration for their lives, much like you have. And then we can just attribute that to you and your stories of, seeing one vision, one path, and then finding yourself in a completely different world, trying to bring other people in and build up, the cyber community with more women, right? And maybe even build a community outside of that for women to have an outlet to, be and communicate, without any sort of misunderstanding.